Chapter 497. The Burning Legion's path of conquest continued. Many things continued in this world, and time continued to pass. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. With the passage of time, the seeds that Liu had planted in this world had already sprouted, grown, bloomed, and bore fruit. Strength and glory. On the platform in front of the war god's temple in the Red Moss Highlands, a burly man over 2 meters tall, wearing heavy armor and holding a large axe the size of a wheel, raised the weapon in his hands. Ha! On the vast plains in front of the war god's temple stood thousands of burly men. They raised their weapons at the same time and shouted loudly. Their mighty voices shook the heavens and earth. Brave warriors of the war god! The burly man on the platform shouted at the countless warriors below, pointing at the war god's temple behind him. 20 years ago, I, Dalmon, was the first to step into the war god's temple and received his blessings. 20 years later, we have become the undisputed masters of this land. We have allowed the world to experience the strength of warriors. This is the strength that the war god has bestowed upon us. This is the glory that the war god has bestowed upon us. Dalmon raised his axe and roared towards the sky, strength and glory, strength and glory. On the vast Red Moss Highlands, cheers rang out like a tsunami. Countless warriors raised their weapons and roared, their voices surging like a raging tide. But Dalmon pointed towards the sea, towards the other side of the sea. But on the other side of the sea, there are countless warriors who have been bullied by the Magi, countless warriors waiting to bathe in the glory of the war god, and countless citizens waiting to be saved. Dalmon raised his huge axe, and his entire body was covered in flames. As the first warriors to bathe in the glory of the war god, we are born with a mission. To save them. To save those suffering people from the cruel rule of the Magi. To spread the strength and glory of warriors throughout the world. War god's army attack! The warriors all over the mountains raised their weapons and surged towards the other side of the sea like a wave. The legendary warrior army of the Chernobyl Islands, after accumulating strength for 20 years, finally waved their fists at the world. A battle between warriors and Magi was about to begin. However, at this moment, the Magi had no time to pay attention to these so-called legendary warriors. 20 years later, the Tower of Truth followed Liu's arrangements and spread the 8 calamity techniques throughout the central region of the Magus continent. 20 years had passed, and the calamity technique had also blossomed. My name is Campas, my throne, the Lord of Paleness. Everyone who cultivates the art of paleness is my subject and subject to my protection. Campas the Campas KK. Campas KTS of Campampas of Campas of Campampas. This commotion caused countless people to be inexplicably shocked. They had no idea what was going on. However, something even more shocking happened. I am the king of the Eventide, I am the king of Yakshas, I am the 9 Fires Hades king, I am the Golden Armored Corpse king, I am a Death Knight, I am the king of Liches, I am the Blood Monarch. After the loud announcement of the king of Paleness, Campas, caused an earth-shattering commotion, the other lords of calamity who had been hiding at the side could no longer sit still. They all revealed their thrones and summoned their subordinates. Yes, subordinates. Liu's 8 cultivation methods all had a hidden setting. Whoever was the first to cultivate this technique to the 7th level would naturally be able to control those who cultivated the same technique. With the appearance of the 8 Lords of Calamity, the Calamity Army was officially formed. In the past 20 years, how far had Seers spread the Calamity technique? How many people had practiced it? Perhaps even Seers himself didn't know. The 8 Lords of Calamity summoned their subordinates, throwing the central region into chaos. The old organizations were broken down one after another, and countless Magi were reorganized according to the Calamity sequence. Under such circumstances, the veteran adept organizations naturally wouldn't allow it. Hence, a war between the old and the new order erupted. This wasn't the end. Rumble. At the edge of the central region of the Magus continent, at the end of the endless wasteland, a volcano that hadn't erupted for many years emitted a violent tremor. It spewed out a shadow and raging flames. Roar, with a loud roar, the shadow and raging flames violently erupted. A 10-meter-tall demon with a pair of large demonic wings and 2 large demonic horns on his head floated in the air. His entire body emitted an endless amount of savagery and ruthlessness. Is this the central region of the Magus continent? The giant demon opened his 2 dark, golden demonic eyes and scanned his surroundings. A pair of pitch-black demonic wings spread open with a whoosh, and endless shadows and raging flames surged out like a tide. I have conquered the Shadow's Nest, I have conquered the extreme darkness, I have conquered the Underdark, I have conquered the eternal darkness. The giant demon landed at the mouth of the volcano, and a mysterious incantation reverberated. Torrential shadows and raging flames surged. At the mouth of the volcano, a pitch-black door formed of shadows slowly opened. Open! The door of darkness! The demon roared, and a vast amount of shadow energy poured into the black door. Rumble. The pitch-black door slowly opened. Behind the door, countless figures stood solemnly, emitting endless darkness. In the name of the Burning Lord, in the name of Julian Stormrage. The giant demon flew high into the sky, and raging flames covered the sky. The Burning Legion will conquer this land. Burning Legion, attack! Roar! Amidst the mad roars, countless figures surged out from behind the door of darkness like a wave. They followed the figure at the front, the most powerful demon, to conquer piece after piece of land. Then, all the forces in the central region of the Magus world were dumbfounded. The old forces were at war with the newly assembled 8 Lords of Calamity. Both sides were in a mess. At this moment, Julian led the Burning Legion and charged in. Without distinguishing between right and wrong, he only asked, to live or to die? Thus, the Scourge Army, the Burning Legion, and the old forces of the Magus world were in a 3-way mess. Warriors of the God of War, kill all the spellcasters. Strength and glory! The legendary warrior legion that crossed the sea swept across the land like a hurricane, bringing even greater chaos to this chaotic world. The season of harvest has finally arrived. After 20 years of waiting, in the eternal silence of the astral plane, the mastermind behind all this smiled and opened his eyes. Chapter 498. The Magus world is already in chaos. Liu raised his head and glanced in the direction of the world of gods. It's time for the world of gods to take action. Mountain of Light. 20 years ago, Liu had casually placed the origin of holy light at the peak of a nameless mountain. Now, this place had become a sacred ground in the hearts of all holy night. After 20 years of development, the path of holy light had spread throughout the world of gods. The paths of punishment, protection, and redemption were deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. Even though the churches of the gods and the Church of Holy Light had countless conflicts and wars, the holy light had spread far and wide. However, the path of the holy knights became more and more widely known, and they were deeply loved by countless civilians. Punish evil, protect the weak, and save others. Even the gods could not refute this kind of benevolent power of order. Hence, in the divine kingdom hanging high in the sky, the gods thought that this was another god's advancement. Towards this benevolent power of order, the gods maintained a cautious attitude. In the era of the Over-God, which was the era of the world of God's planar consciousness, any internal strife between the gods was not allowed. To the planar consciousness of the world of gods, the birth of any new god or the resurrection of a fallen god was an increase in its own strength. The planar consciousness, which had been burying itself in accumulating power, was naturally unwilling to expend its main battle strength in internal strife. The origin of holy light, that Liu had created was exactly the same as the power of faith in the gods. Even if the holy knights were to shout, "Holy light is not faith," every day, this was just another method of preaching. Today, with the efforts of countless holy knights over the past 20 years, the power of holy light had accumulated to an enormous amount. Hence, it's time to take action. Under Liu's command, a pure ray of light suddenly blossomed from the temple at the peak of the mountain of light. Brilliant rays of light illuminated the heavens and earth, as if a scorching sun had risen from the ground. Holy light above. Seeing this pure, warm, and boundless ray of light, countless holy knights in the world of gods prostrated themselves on the ground. "My name is Uther, the emissary of holy light." Amidst the brilliant rays of light, a middle-aged man with a head full of golden hair and a square face, wearing heavy armor and wielding a war hammer, appeared in midair. "My companions who follow the path of holy light, when you punish evil, have you ever thought why the evil in this world can never be eradicated? When you protect the weak, have you ever thought about why the weak in this world can never be protected? When you're treating the pain, have you ever thought about why the pain in this world can never be cured? Because Uther raised the hammer in his hand and pointed it towards the sky and the kingdom of the gods. Because they caused all of this, they are the source of all unfairness and injustice. In the name of the holy light, knights who follow the path of the holy light, break this cage that has enveloped the entire world with our passion and faith. Boom! Vast and mighty holy light burst forth violently, like the light of dawn piercing through the darkness, resolutely crashing into the divine kingdom of the gods. This God of holy light, is there something wrong with his head? The gods looked at each other in dismay when they saw this scene in their god's kingdom. This should be considered a declaration of war, right? But a new god was actually declaring war on all the gods, regardless of their lineup, good or evil, strong or weak. The realm of a true god was equivalent to a rank 7 magus on the path of laws. However, the power of a true god was condensed from the laws of faith and transformed into divine power. This divine power was the source of a god's power. How much divine power could a new god have accumulated even if he had preached for 20 years? He actually dared to declare war on the gods? Wasn't there something wrong with his head? More importantly, this new god didn't spend time building his own god's kingdom and didn't manage his own god's kingdom. Instead, he went to war with his real body. Having a god's kingdom was equivalent to having a fortress with unlimited firepower and absolute defense. A true god without a god's kingdom going to war with his real body was simply courting death. Yes, it was indeed courting death. The value of the holy light source's existence was courting death. A holy light energy body without its own will was courting death without any regard for its own safety, courageous and fearless. The gods scoffed at this god of holy light who had a problem with his head and didn't care at all. They were only waiting for this idiot to come knocking on their door. Then, in front of the entire world, they would slap this idiot to death and increase their reputation in the world of God. However, just as the gods were about to ruthlessly teach this god of holy light a lesson, on the elven island of eternity, a giant tree that reached the heavens and the earth erupted with a green light that shook the heavens and the earth. Elves, the time for battle has arrived. After 100,000 years of silence, the mighty elves will once again reclaim their lost glory. Battle! Conquer! Let the glory of the elves illuminate the entire world. On Eternity Island, countless legions of druids and blades of dawn charged out of Eternity Island like a raging tide, slaughtering their way towards the entire world. The gods' kingdom was already in a complete mess. Rumble. Green light filled the sky. The power of a rank 8 magus from the wisdom tree erupted with green light that directly interfered with the gods' power. Damn it! What's going on? The gods were aghast to find that they had lost control of the laws. At this moment, the gods' power was at a standstill. The holy light will never be extinguished. Uther took advantage of this opportunity and roared, crazily charging into the sky. Under the gods' shocked gazes, Uther suddenly plunged into the weave. Ah, his target is the weave! Damn it! Stop him! However, it was all too late. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound rang out. The weave that enveloped the entire world of gods, under the eruption of the origin of holy light, erupted with a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. Time, space, laws, and order all became chaotic at this moment. The weave was an extremely important materialization of laws in the world of God. There were 9 levels of the weave, and the first 7 were open to everyone. From rank 0 acolytes to legendary wizards. According to the saying of the Magus world, from rank 0 acolytes to rank 6 glorious sun magi, all spells were in the weave. More importantly, although the weave was controlled by a goddess, the gods were also using it. All the divine spells that the gods gave to the priests were also inscribed in the weave. The priests were also connected to the weave, and obtained the divine spells bestowed by the gods. The 8th level was at the level of the gods, or the power of a rank 7 magus. These were all in the hands of the god. As for the 9th level, it was a prison, imprisoning the rank 8 magi who had failed to invade the world of gods and were sealed after the previous war. The weave, the world of God's planar will, is a web of laws that controls the entire world. Li Yu saw the origin of holy light self-destruct in the weave. At this moment, Li Yu smiled and flicked his finger. Then, under the astonishment of the gods and the dumbfounded gazes of countless people, the weave that had enveloped this world for countless years disappeared. Within the origin of holy light, Li Yu had installed a resource bank. When the origin of holy light self-destructed, it shook the weave and disrupted the laws. At this moment, the gods were unable to control the weave, and the true owner of the weave, the overgod planar will, had been alarmed, but had yet to awaken. At this moment, the weave was no longer under anyone's control. It was an inanimate object, so the system's resource bank naturally stored it away. War. This is war. War has already erupted. The awakened overgod, the planar will of the gods, let out a furious roar, and a vast divine brilliance engulfed the entire world of gods. I've decided to retaliate. The overgod roared, and the tightly shut planar membrane of the gods opened. Within the vast divine brilliance, an endless army of angels swept out like a tidal wave. At the same time, in the depths of the Magus world's core, a slumbering consciousness had been awakened. This is war. The Magus world's planar will roared, and in the 7th, 6th, and 5th levels of the subterranean world, countless figures with vast and majestic auras rushed into the sky under the control of the planar will. The war had already erupted. Chapter 499. They've finally started fighting. Li Yu, who was hiding in the astral plane and watching the show, noticed 2 mighty rays of light rushing out from the boundary between the world of gods and the Magus world. He immediately smiled. One ray of light was holy and glorious, with endless hymns lingering and angels soaring. This was the overgod of the world of gods leading a group of gods to charge out of the boundary and kill their way out. In the other ray of light, an endless elemental storm swept out. Earth, water, fire, and wind intertwined, engulfing the heavens and earth. This was the Magus army led by the Magus world's planar consciousness. Boom. The 2 great essences of the gray space had just collided violently. The void trembled, and time and space trembled. The entire crystal wall shook violently, letting out a series of violent roars. Endless rays of light exploded, the dazzling rays brighter than millions of suns, blinding one's eyes. At this moment, the opportunity that Li Yu had been waiting for had arrived. This is the origin of the great Tao. The origin of matter of the Magus world, the origin of order of the world of gods. In this most direct collision, all secrets were exposed to Li Yu. So that's how it is. Matter and order, time and space. Li Yu's eyes flashed with endless brilliance, his soul splitting into millions and millions, constantly analyzing all the laws of this crystal wall system. Heaven and earth surged, and earth, water, fire, and wind revolved around Li Yu. Yin and yang intertwined, and the order of heaven and earth condensed around Li Yu. Matter and order complement each other, and neither can be lacking. Matter without order is just chaos. Order without matter is just an empty concept. Only the combination of matter and order can form a complete world. At this moment, Li Yu's body shook, and the heaven and earth qi and yin and yang qi intertwined. Taiji, yin, yang, 5 elements, and 8 trigrams merged into one Taiji diagram. At this moment, Li Yu discovered that his yin and yang qi and heaven and earth qi had turned into a Taiji diagram in his sea of consciousness. This is the combination of matter and order. This is my greatest gain in this world. Li Yu nodded satisfyingly as his cultivation base had improved by another level. Boom! Standing at the peak of the star boundary, the land of eternal silence, Li Yu saw that the great battle below had already turned into chaos. The violent clash of laws caused the countless planes of the entire crystal wall system to tremble violently. Time and space were in chaos as planes collided. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. I've already reaped what I should have reaped. Li Yu looked at the doomsday-like scene below and sighed as he shook his head. Therefore, it's time for this farce to end. With a grab, the laws of the world of gods materialized in Li Yu's hands, the weave. This thing can be considered a part of the heavenly Tao. Then let's use it to manipulate the heavenly Tao. Li Yu's hand flashed with endless radiance as he poured the origin source laws he had just comprehended into the weave. Boom! An earth-shattering boom shook the entire crystal wall system. Buzz, there was a slight trembling sound, and at the peak of the astral boundary, that land of eternal silence, an endless radiance erupted. The vast radiance engulfed the heavens and the earth, running through every corner of the crystal wall system. The radiance illuminated the world, and all things in the world came to a standstill. Between heaven and earth, there was nothing else apart from this radiance. This radiance revealed an endless holiness and nobility, as if it was the sovereign of the heavens and the earth, the ruler of the world. What's going on? At this moment, the entire crystal wall system was in shock. Whether it was the chaos within the planes or the great battle in the void of the astral boundary, everything came to a standstill under this radiance. Whether it was the Magi or the gods, everyone in the crystal wall system lost their strength at this moment. The Magi's spirit could not move elemental particles, and they could not cast spells. The gods' divinity could not move the laws of the heavens and the earth, and they could not cast divine spells. Of course, even the messy army that Li Yu had created had their strength sealed at the same time. What's going on? The Magi were shocked and they were dumbfounded. This is impossible. The gods cried out in disbelief. This is... The 2 wills of the planes, 2 huge balls of light, flickered incessantly, as if in shock. The Legion insignia, what's going on? Although Julian was still in his demon form, he could not use any power. The ruler has awakened. The ruler? The ruler of this world? My power comes from Titan. Even if he's the ruler of this world, how can he seal Titan's power? Julian was flustered and exasperated. Because he's stronger than Titan. Huh! When he heard the words Legion insignia, Julian was dumbfounded. An existence stronger than Titan? What kind of existence was that? If he messed around in this world, would he be crushed to death by the ruler? Rumble! At this moment, the radiance that filled the entire crystal wall system and penetrated all the planes revealed an incomparably imposing figure. I am the founder of this world, the master of the heavens and the earth, the ruler of all things and all living beings. A voice rang out from the radiance. The mighty voice spread throughout the crystal wall system, and in every corner of this world, This figure could be seen and heard. This is impossible. The two great plane wills roared in disbelief at the same time. After hundreds of millions of years of fighting, the two of them were the most powerful existences in the crystal wall system. There was no one else. "You've disappointed me too much." It seemed to be sighing, reprimanding, and even a little exasperated. "The two of you should have supported each other, helped each other, and managed this world together. But you've always been at war with each other. I've given you a chance to change, but you've never repented. You've fought 25 wars that almost destroyed the world. It's time for all of this to end." In the brilliant radiance, an incomparably enormous hand of radiance appeared. The hand grabbed the light balls manifested by the wills of the two planes, as if they were eggs in a basket. "Ah, impossible! Impossible! How can there be a ruler in this world? I'm the supreme God, I'm the supreme God." The two plane consciousnesses were screaming madly, roaring angrily and struggling with all their might. But it was meaningless. The plane wills that were born according to the origin of the world were part of the natural order. How could a part of the natural order fight against the entire natural order? "I've granted you authority, but that's no reason for your arrogance." The giant hand of radiance clenched, and brilliant divine radiance blossomed violently. Endless light sprinkled down like raindrop. It was as if the two plane wills had been crushed by this radiant hand of light. It really is a ruler. Apart from a ruler, who else could have such ability? "My Lord, please forgive our sins." At this moment, all the existences in the crystal wall system could only bow down. Chapter 500. I've finally caught these two fellows. Liu looked at the two planar consciousnesses that had been stored in the resource warehouse, and could not help but laugh. My efforts were not in vain. Liu naturally could not be a ruler. Those so-called God of creation and the like were naturally all lies. Even if he had the weave, even if he had analyzed the origin laws of this world, it was impossible for him to become the ruler of a world in such a short time. Even with Liu's current cultivation, he could only interfere with the laws of this world for a short period of time. That was enough. All the arrangements, all the backup plans, were all for this short moment. As long as the two planar consciousnesses ran out of their lairs and he grabbed them, they would not be able to resist. That was enough. System, scan the two planar consciousnesses and record all the information of the laws into the resource warehouse. Scan complete. Recording complete. The system quickly completed Liu's instructions. Very good. With a backup, I don't have to worry about breaking it. Liu grinned and waved his hand. The two balls of light formed by the planar consciousnesses appeared in his hand. First of all, the laws of heaven and earth should not have a will. He held the two balls of light in his hands and rubbed them as if they were round balls. With a flash of light, Liu directly destroyed the consciousness of the two planar consciousnesses. Laws can only be laws. They should not have a consciousness. Liu reached out and patted the two balls of light that had their consciousness destroyed and turned into pure order and matter origin. He patted them into a ray of light and poured it into the weave that Liu had modified. Matter and order fuse origin. Brilliant light erupted from his hands. The weave fused with the light of order and matter origin, turning into a dazzling net of light. Very good. At this moment, I can be considered a true ruler. Liu reached out and pressed down. The net of light instantly fused with the entire crystal wall system and penetrated all the planes. In the name of the ruler, I shall reshape the heavens and earth. After the net of light penetrated the entire world, endless light swept through all the planes like a wave. The merging of the plane of gods and the plane of magi. With a thought, Liu sensed all the planes floating in the crystal wall system with his soul. The entire crystal wall system was like a pond. The planes were like fish swimming in a pond. Boom! The two largest fish in the pond collided violently with each other as a vast and mighty radiance surged forth. The radiance that filled the sky surged like a raging tide. Amidst the violent vibrations, the boundary barriers of the sorcerer plane and the god's plane merged with each other. The order and the origin of matter merged into one. Buzz, a violent trembling sound rang out, as if the void was shaking violently. The vast radiance that permeated the two planes began to boil violently like boiling water. When the light gradually subsided, a brand new, huge, and vast plane appeared. This was a vast and boundless land. The rivers, lakes, and seas were all inland. There was no ocean outside. Lakes and inland seas shone with a faint blue radiance, dotting this vast continent like a green carpet dotted with countless stars. This is the new main plane. Liu looked at this newly formed continent and nodded with satisfaction. I have to deal with the other small planes. Earth, water, fire, wind, 4 elemental planes construct. Among the scattered small planes, most of them could be related to the 4 elemental planes. After merging one by one, they turned into 4 huge elemental planes surrounding the main plane. Light elemental plane, merge. This crystal wall system had a huge light elemental plane, and that was the sun. The scattered light elemental planes merged into the sun one after another, turning into a brilliant sun once again. Dark elemental plane, merge. The endless abyss, the 9 hells, the dark elemental plane, and the death elemental plane merged into a huge and complicated multi-layered plane, hanging below the main plane. The remaining planes are a little special. In addition to the single elemental planes, there were many small planes that were similar to the main world. They were formed by a complex elemental structure. Let's treat these as stars. With a wave of his hand, these small planes floated above the main plane, turning into a starry sky. There's a sun, stars, and naturally a moon. At this time, there weren't many planes left, but there were still 2 special planes. One was the dark red plane that Liu caught the trial's eye, which was similar to purgatory. The other was the icy blue cold light plane. Then I'll use you as moons. With a wave of his hand, the icy blue and dark red moons hung high in the sky above the main plane. The remaining planes, Liu looked at the remaining planes and found that these planes had all kinds of attributes. They were messy and somewhat difficult to sort out. Then I'll just make do with it. He merged these messy planes into a ball and turned them into a secondary plane, casually hanging in the void outside the main plane. All right, it's done. Liu clapped his hands, indicating that he had finished. This was the first time he had done something similar to world creation. Although this was just a map editor and was far from truly creating a world. However, this still allowed Liu to gain a lot. Very good, it didn't break at all. Liu was very satisfied with the world he had created. Then let's add some rules. After editing the map, it was naturally time to open the modifier. The path of the holy light is naturally a must. Liu looked at the sun hanging high in the sky. With a point of his hand, he branded the path of the holy light onto the sun. From then on, in the entire world, as long as the sun shone, there would be holy light. The path of the legendary warrior, the calamity technique, the path of the druid, I can't let go of these. It was rare to have an opportunity to experiment. Liu naturally wanted to grab hold of it and play with it. After all, he wasn't afraid of breaking it. With a swipe of his hand, the path of the warrior, the calamity, and the path of the druid were all branded into the web of rules. All right, it's time to name this world. Liu glanced at the main world and saw that the waters were like blue stars embellished. Suddenly, a name appeared in his mind. Kalimdor. Huh? The land of eternal starlight? Kalimdor? It does seem a little similar. Liu laughed heartily. Then let's call it Kalimdor. Thus, the main world became Kalimdor, and the chaotic fusion of the secondary world became Draenor. I suddenly realized that it really does look similar. Liu glanced at the main world and saw a giant tree towering into the sky near an inland sea. Countless elves lived under the giant tree. This is the wisdom tree. At this time, it should be called Teldrassil. Liu smiled and looked at the northern part of the main world. There was a floating city frozen in frost. The 8 great scourge armies were gathered around the floating city. This is the ice-sealing throne. Lich King Seers? Ha! Liu laughed and shook his head. Forget it, this has nothing to do with me. Looking at the land of eternal stillness, Liu was suddenly stunned. There's actually this place left undealt with? Forget it, I'll leave it as an observation station. Don't the Titans like to play like this? System, leave a plain positioning mark in the land of eternal stillness. Liu wasn't very interested in this world. There was no need to keep the merchant base. As for whether the moon would become Ilun, whether the sun would become Ansha, and whether there would be Burning Crusade, that was none of Liu's business. So, everyone, enjoy your Warcraft. Liu smiled and waved his hand, walking away in a carefree manner. Chapter 501. Return. With a flash of light, Liu instantly returned to the store space. Sure enough, it's a bit deserted. Standing in the immortal mansion, Liu raised his head and swept his gaze around. It was quiet all around. The entire space was silent, and there was not a single shadow to be seen. The store space had not been so deserted for a long time, and Liu was actually not used to it. Whoosh! A jade-green vine swayed like a dragon. It seemed to be greeting Liu, but in reality, it was just Ting Qing stretching his back. Ting Qing, this guy. Liu shook his head speechlessly and ignored Ting Qing. Stepping out of the store space, Liu returned to the gazing river peak of Kangwu Mountain. With a sweep of his spirit, he instantly connected to the net. Everything that had happened on South Parting Island in the past few days after Liu left flashed before his eyes. Very good, everything is normal. After praising the crystal spider, Liu's spirit retreated from the net. After the War of the Heavens, Liu restored order and preached to the world. The entire South Parting Island had already regained its peace. The human race, the demon race, and the barbarian race of the Central Plains were all peacefully cultivating and developing. Yin Luo is also seriously cultivating. Liu's spirit swept across Kangwu Mountain. Everyone in the sect was seriously recultivating the great Tao of the 5 elements that Liu had passed down. Yin Luo was also cultivating. After Liu used the immortal ancestor's blood and true Lord Tianluo's spirit to change her aptitude, Yin Luo switched to cultivating the great white essence Qi scripture. In just a few days, she had succeeded in cultivating Qi, and her progress was extraordinary. As for Yin Kongming, after going through all these things, he seemed to have been enlightened. He did not care about cultivation or external affairs, and only focused on accompanying his daughter. This is a pretty good ending. Liu nodded and retracted his gaze. On South Parting Island, there is an immortal artifact net on the outside and the 5 divine spirits on the inside. There is basically no need to worry about anything happening. According to the Origin World's strength classification, the 5 divine spirits were equivalent to heavenly humans. Liu had refined the net again. With the artifact spirit, the crystal spider, controlling it, it could unleash the combat strength of a heaven monarch. Such a force could be considered an overlord in the so-called southern heaven region of the Origin World, so there was no need to worry about their safety. That's all for now. Liu sat down in the courtyard at the peak of the river gazing peak. In the Magus world, I played a ruthless game and reaped great rewards. Although Liu didn't bring anything back from this trip, the real harvest was greater than ever before. Although Liu's store space still looked empty, at Liu's current level, ordinary things were basically useless. Even if he took them back, they would only be used as decorations. The true harvest of this trip was his comprehension of the great Tao of heaven and earth, as well as the laws of the world. I am in charge of the heavenly laws, the heavenly decrees, and the heavenly laws. My will is the will of heaven. This was the Tao in Li Yu's heart, the goal he pursued. In all the heavens and myriad worlds, only I reign supreme. Although he had been saying this, and had been working hard in this direction, in reality, he could really be said to be the ruler of all things in the Magus world. This time, he played as he pleased. It was in this free will that Li Yu had a clearer understanding of his own path. Tai Chi diagram. With a wave of his hand, the Qi of heaven and earth and the Qi of yin and yang converged, and a Tai Chi diagram appeared in Li Yu's palm. This was Li Yu's greatest harvest from this trip. The laws of heaven and earth of a world, even if it was the Magus world, and even if the foundation of that world was not deep, this was a very complete and self-consistent way of operating heaven and earth. This is the heavenly Tao. The Tai Chi diagram in Li Yu's hand trembled slightly, and the Tai Chi yin and yang revolved. The 5 elements generated and suppressed. The 8 trigrams evolved. It was as if a world was born in his palm. Primordial Qi of heaven and earth, Tai Chi yin and yang. As the two converged and circulated, it became smoother and smoother, without the previous sense of awkwardness. I'm still a long way from truly creating a world. With a clench of his hand, the strange phenomenon in his palm dissipated, as if a part of the world had been destroyed in his palm. This is my path. The path ahead of his cultivation was already clear. Tracing back, from the primordial Qi of heaven and earth, to the Tai Chi yin and yang, and finally to the primordial chaos. Nothingness is the beginning of heaven and earth. Finally, it reached the chaotic void and became the source of everything. This path must be very difficult. Li Yu took a deep breath, but his gaze was incomparably resolute. He was very clear that the chaotic void was not so easy to achieve. It was not even something that humans could achieve. The chaotic void was the beginning of the birth of all matter and order, the source of all existence and all concepts. The Tao can be said, but it is not the Tao. Everything that could be said, seen, felt, and described was not the primordial beginning or the chaotic void. Therefore, comprehending the rules of heaven and earth of the myriad worlds, going from complex to simple, nurturing hundreds of scriptures, using myself as the furnace and the rules of the myriad worlds as the firewood to cultivate my primordial beginning. Li Yu looked up at the horizon and stood up with a smile. Since there's nothing in the main world, I'll just continue to open the next world. With a flash of his figure, Li Yu returned to the mall space. There was no mall stronghold set up in the previous world. This Level 2 stronghold mission is still quite far away. Li Yu sat down in the main hall of the Immortal Mansion and opened the system interface. Seeing the lit-up mission authorization, he shook his head speechlessly. Only after 10 mall strongholds are completed can I upgrade my authorization. Now, I'm still missing a few. Ancient Trees Auction House, Monkey's Flower Fruit Mountain Main Hall, Ao Jin's Dragon Island Dragon Transformation Pond, and the Ancient Races Mount Gu Dao Copper Tower. After so long, I've only completed 4 mall strongholds. Li Yu frowned and felt that his progress was a bit slow. After so long, he was still only at Level 2 authorization. If there were many authorization levels in this system, how long would it take to upgrade? The value of the Sorcerer World is not great, so there is no mall stronghold set up. But, the 9 Dragons Coffin World, there is no mall stronghold set up? Li Yu was cleaning up the mall stronghold when he suddenly realized that there was no mall stronghold set up in the 9 Dragons Coffin World. This should not be. At that time, I didn't have the ability to set up a mall stronghold. Li Yu thought for a while and remembered. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. Although he got his first bucket of gold by swindling people, it was also very dangerous and lucky. That place is very valuable. The foundation of Li Yu's journey to where he was today originated from that world. So, it's time to go back and take a look. Chapter 502. System, Connect to the Book of the Highest Heavens. Zhou Yi, who wanted to be great Emperor Xianyuan, was the first system that Li Yu created, and he was the host. Thinking of how he was careless and played the role of Grand Supreme over there, fooling around, Li Yu's heart was still trembling. I was really lucky that I wasn't crushed to death by someone's finger at that time. Li Yu recalled, and a trace of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. There was Grand Supreme Elderly Lord in that world. The spiritual wisdom of Heavenly Lord Dao Da's corpse was only at the quasi-emperor realm, but it was too easy for him to crush me with one finger at that time. Fortunately, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord in that world was only a quasi-emperor and couldn't know everything in the world. It was very likely that he didn't know that Li Yu pretended to be Grand Supreme and fooled around. Remote connection successful. The system quickly connected to Zhou Yi's Book of the Highest Heavens system. Lock on the world coordinates and activate plane teleportation. With Zhou Yi's Book of the Highest Heavens positioning, the system reactivated plane teleportation. Although it wasn't as convenient as the market stronghold, it wasn't difficult. Buzz, a faint light flashed, and the plane teleportation channel had been opened. Let's go back and take a look. Li Yu smiled and stepped into the plane teleportation channel. As the light flashed, heaven and earth instantly changed. Beep beep, the sound of car horns sounded in his ears, and a long-lost scene appeared in front of him again. This was a bustling modern city. The lights were on, and the people on the roadside were weaving. The road was full of traffic, and the gorgeous neon lights were colorful. I'm here again? The scene in front of him was very familiar. The noisy streets and the sound of car horns were just like back then. Chi of heaven and earth? Li Yu looked up at the sky and found that the haze that shrouded the city had dissipated, and the world was filled with faint chi of heaven and earth. What time is it now? With a sweep of his spirit, everything in the world was in his senses, and the sequence of time was clearly displayed in front of Li Yu's eyes. Then he couldn't help but laugh. I've become stupid from cultivating immortality. If I want to look at the time, do I need to do this? On a building in front, the time was clearly displayed on a huge electronic screen. It's already been over 200 years. The electronic screen displayed the year 2236, which surprised Li Yu, because he realized that the Earth of the 23rd century did not seem to be particularly high-tech. Is the development of science and technology relatively weak in the cultivation world? Li Yu smiled and did not probe further. With a flick of his sleeves, he took a step forward and arrived at the Kunlun Mountains. As expected, Li Yu raised his eyes and looked ahead. He saw the vast and boundless Kunlun Mountain hidden behind the huge ancient formation. In the land of immortal ascension of the Kunlun Mountains, in the immortal nurturing pool, set up by the ancient Yuhua god dynasty, where thousands of dragons gathered and nurtured immortal roots, the tattered green cauldron had already disappeared. 200 years have passed. Has Yi Fan already returned to Earth once? He took away the broken green cauldron and allowed the spiritual energy of the land of immortal ascension to nourish Earth. Only then did Earth's vital energy of heaven and earth no longer withered. After understanding everything, Li Yu no longer had any interest in the land of immortal ascension. Li Yu turned around, took a step forward, and arrived at Mount Dongyue. Back then, I ruthlessly tricked them here. Now that I think about it, it's really a bit childish. Li Yu smiled and shook his head. He walked to the place where the 9 dragons pulling the coffin had fallen. The damage on the Jade Emperor Peak had long since been repaired, and it was no longer as dilapidated as it was back then. But the 5-colored altar is also gone. Li Yu didn't care about this. The current him could travel through the sea of stars with a single thought. Of course, he didn't need to rely on the bronze coffin to reach the Big Dipper like he did back then. The earth has already recovered its vitality of heaven and earth. I believe that cultivators will appear in the future. Liu stood at the peak of the mountain and looked at the divine continent. Sure enough, he discovered that the heaven and earth were resonating with each other. The hidden dragon in the earth vein gave birth to a bit of a phenomenon. Since I'm here, I'll leave something behind. He pointed with his finger, and a ray of spiritual light landed on the peak of Mount Tai. Liu imprinted the entire Tao scripture on the Jade Emperor peak. I'll leave it for the fated one. With a flick of his sleeves, Liu stepped into the void and walked toward the starry sky. A stream of flowing light flashed like water, and Liu instantly landed on Mars. It's still the same. The dark red and desolate planet in front of him was the same as it was back then. But with Liu's current realm, he naturally discovered many extraordinary places. Mars Ocean Eye. Looking at the blood-red sunken ground that exuded a murderous aura, Liu secretly rejoiced in his heart. Back then, you didn't have any ability at all, and you still pretended to be something in such a dangerous place. Liu smiled and shook his head. At this time, he also understood. It really wasn't lucky that nothing happened to him back then after messing around. The power of the system is indeed powerful. It deceives karma and conceals heaven's secret. That's why no one can calculate my background and crush me to death with a finger. Back then, he had borrowed the power of the system to luckily take advantage of it. At this moment, Liu was already standing at the top of this world, and was no longer afraid of anything. There's still something good in the Mars Ocean Eye. Liu glanced at the Mars Ocean, smiled, and walked over. At the North Pole of Mars, there was a sunken ground that was as red as blood. This was where the Mars Ocean Eye was. The Mars Ocean Eye has buried an era. This dark red ground is as if it was dyed red with blood. Liu glanced at the center of the sunken ground and waved his hand. A huge rock that was as big as a mountain below flew up, revealing a black hole that was as black as ink and exuded an endless murderous aura. A dense chill surged up, and the sound of a raging tide could be faintly heard. It is indeed a place of murderous aura. Liu frowned slightly and pointed his finger. A ray of light fell into the black hole, and the endless brilliance was like a scorching sun hanging high in the sky, sweeping away all the darkness. Stepping in, the black hole in front of him was already brightly lit. It's simply another world. In the brilliant light, the world in the Mars Ocean Eye was actually vast and boundless, as if it was a boundless world. This was a vast and boundless body of water, and the dark and cold water covered the entire world. In Liu's eyes, there was a layer of dark red earth under this black water. However, it was not earth, but countless densely piled corpses. The piled corpses had already turned into earth. As expected of the burial of an era. Liu sighed and waved his hand. The black water separated, revealing the earth of corpses. On this dark red earth there was a black palace. It's really here. Glancing in the direction of the black palace, Liu smiled and waved his hand. Dong, a bell sound shook the void, and heaven and earth roared. The dark red ground exploded with a loud bang, and scorching hot magma gushed out from it. A brilliant light rushed out from the ground. Divine patterns flowed, and Tao laws intertwined. An immortal bell shining with divine light appeared in front of Liu. The imprint of the Kunlun immortal bell. Chapter 503. There were a few famous immortal artifacts in this world. Desolate Tower, Green Cauldron, Immortal Bell. These were the three most famous immortal artifacts. The Desolate Tower was in the hands of Emperor Qing, and the Green Cauldron was broken. However, the Immortal Bell was nowhere to be found. At this moment, the imprint of the Kunlun Immortal Bell appeared in the World Burial Ground beneath the Chaos Sea. This was once the place where Emperor Wu Shi and the Immortal Emperor fought. Liu looked around and saw the shattered primal chaos space, the faintly flowing immortal light, and the two figures that were imprinted in the void within the primal chaos space. Whether it was the Kunlun immortal bell or the two figures, they were all just imprints. It was only because of the explosion of a powerful force that it left behind an eternal imprint between heaven and earth. Did Emperor Wu Shi and the immortal emperor enter the gap between the two realms from here? Liu smiled. For the time being, he did not have the mood to pay attention to the two peak existences in the mortal realm. The Kunlun immortal bell is my target. Liu looked at the imprint of the Kunlun immortal bell that was condensed in the air. Although this was only an imprint, it was still an immortal artifact's imprint. It had all the characteristics of the Kunlun immortal bell. Take it. With a wave of his hand, Liu took the imprint of the Kunlun immortal bell into his hand. A spiritual light flickered on his fingertip. The mysterious yellow energy and the yin and yang energies intertwined and flowed like a tide, brushing past the imprint of the Kunlun immortal bell. In the blink of an eye, all the laws of the Kunlun immortal bell were broken down by Liu. With a sweep of his divine soul, he understood everything about the immortal bell. The Kunlun immortal bell was used by the immortal emperor to attack Emperor Wu Shi. After the explosion, the immortal bell broke away from the immortal emperor's control and flew into the sky. Liu had already understood the ins and outs of the matter, so he was no longer interested in the chaos CI. With a flash of his figure, Liu escaped from the eye of the sea and returned to the chaos ancient star. The Kunlun immortal bell is very useful for my next plan. Liu smiled as he stared at the horizon. A spot of spiritual light bloomed in his hand as boundless streams of light revolved around it. Divine inscriptions condensed as the Tao laws manifested. The faint shadow of an immortal bell appeared in Liu's hand. This was the brand of the Kunlun immortal bell that Liu had reconstructed with his own strength. Resonance. Summon. With a flick of his finger, the immortal bell imprint that Liu had reconstructed in his hand shook violently and let out a melodious chime. Clang, the melodious sound of the bell rang, and the sound waves rippled out like water ripples. The sound of the bell was not loud, nor did it shake the heavens and earth, nor did it have the momentum to shake the stars. It was only a faint, melodious sound, like the evening drum or morning bell. However, this sound wave silently swept through the entire world, and the entire universe. Clang, in a certain corner of this universe, a dilapidated copper bell buried in the soil, covered in rust, suddenly shook violently. Boom! The copper bell burst out with a ray of light. The soil and rust that had accumulated on the bell was instantly peeled off in the light, and a simple and thick copper bell appeared. With just a flash, the copper bell instantly broke through the void, passed through the starry river, and appeared in front of Liu. Kunlun immortal bell. Seeing the copper bell that broke through the void, Liu chuckled and reached out to grab the Kunlun immortal bell. Clang! The Kunlun immortal bell rang and swayed slightly, about to break through the void and fly out. Freeze! Liu summoned the Kunlun immortal bell because he wanted to get the immortal bell. How could he let it escape? With a point of his finger, time flowed and everything in the world froze. Even if the Kunlun immortal bell was an immortal weapon, even if it was more spiritual than an emperor weapon, it could not compare to a real mortal immortal. As soon as the immobilization technique was used, the Kunlun immortal bell was instantly frozen in the void, unable to move. An immortal weapon is still very useful to me. With a wave of his sleeve, the Kunlun immortal bell was instantly stored in the resource vault by Liu. With the immortal bell in hand, there's basically nothing to worry about. Liu glanced at the resource vault and reached out to grab the Kunlun immortal bell in his hand. Clang, clang, clang. The Kunlun immortal bell in his hand kept vibrating, like a small animal that was caught by someone. It kept ringing and struggling. In fact, the spirituality of the immortal bell was probably equivalent to a small animal. You really don't know what's good for you. Liu scolded with a smile and flicked his finger on the immortal bell. It's not easy for you to give birth to spirituality. It's quite a pity to erase it. So, it's better to refine it. The light in his hand flowed out, and the Tai Chi yin-yang fish circled around the immortal bell. Black and yellow chi rose and enveloped the entire immortal bell. Clang! Clang! The melodious sound of the bell rang. A moment later, a 2-inch copper bell appeared in Li Yu's hand. The immortal bell is indeed extraordinary. Li Yu glanced at his waist, took down the soul-shaking bell, and hung the immortal bell on it. The preparations are done. It's time to go to the Big Dipper starfield. After refining the Kunlun immortal bell, Li Yu looked up in the direction of the Big Dipper starfield. He leaped up, broke through the void, and strolled towards the Big Dipper starfield. With a flash of flowing light, Li Yu's figure appeared in the Big Dipper starfield. This is the forbidden area of the desolate ancient? Seeing the familiar 9 mountains and the bottomless abyss below, Li Yu smiled and nodded. I'm back here again. Li Yu's forehead broke out in cold sweat when he thought of how he had plucked the divine medicine, collected the divine spring, and even moved away the bronze immortal palace under vicious snows. I didn't die back then? I didn't die back then? Turning his head to look at the bottom of the abyss, Li Yu saw a white-robed figure sitting at the bottom of the abyss. Especially when he saw the Chaos Dragon's nest and the coffins inside, the corners of his mouth twitched. Including little Nan Nan and the heaven-devouring demonic pot, Vicious is already the body of 9 lives. 9 lives combined into one, she's immortal. With Li Yu's current realm, he could naturally see Vicious' state at a glance. At this moment, Vicious was already immortal. But she didn't combine the bodies of 9 lives. Instead, she transformed her own true spirit and reincarnated into little Nan Nan. Not to become an immortal, but to wait for your return in the mortal world? Little Nan Nan was Vicious' childhood. She was the lonely little girl whose brother was taken away by the Yuhua god dynasty. Little Nanan's existence was to continue the incomplete story of that life. You're here. When Li Yu looked at the bottom of the abyss, the white-robed woman at the bottom of the abyss also raised her head. A pair of incomparably deep eyes looked at Li Yu expressionlessly. Yes, I'm here again. Li Yu smiled and nodded. He took a step forward and landed at the bottom of the abyss, arriving in front of Vicious. With Li Yu's current realm, he already had the confidence to face Vicious head-on. This time, his back wasn't as sweaty as last time. The path to immortality is about to open. You should be here too. Vicious pointed at the depths of the abyss. There, Li Yu saw the rift that was about to be formed in the void. As expected, it's time. Li Yu saw the spatial rift that was about to appear at the bottom of the abyss. He sighed and shook his head. The path to immortality was about to open. The dark turmoil was about to arrive. Next, the entire universe would be filled with a rain of blood. Chapter 504. Did you just say that I'm here? Li Yu turned around and looked at Vicious with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Vicious had yet to merge his 9 lives into one, so he could not be considered a true immortal. Moreover, even a true immortal would not be able to predict Li Yu's past and future. Putting aside the fact that the system could conceal karma, Li Yu's cultivation level had already concealed the heavenly secrets, making it impossible for others to predict his future. So why did Vicious say that he was here? Did Vicious already know that he was coming? Vicious paid no heed to Li Yu at all. Like a jade statue, he did not even bat an eyelid. I'll say. Li Yu could not do anything if Vicious was unwilling to say. He only felt helpless. Alright. You can continue to pretend to be a statue. Li Yu waved his hand and walked toward the location of the spatial rift. There was a void in front of him, but there were ruins at the bottom of the abyss. Amidst the ruins, a gigantic stone tablet stood tall. The words, Path of Immortalization, were inscribed on the stone tablet. As expected, this is a path of immortality from many years ago. The celestial realm was separated from the mortal world, but there were still spatial rifts. These rifts were the so-called path of immortality. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to enter the path of immortality. Liu sighed in his heart. This path of immortality was also a dead end. The celestial realm was damaged, and the laws of heaven and earth instinctively protected it, not allowing anyone to transcend. Even thearchs only had a lifespan of 10,000 years. Even if they used the elixir of immortality, they could only live for 2 lives before returning to heaven and earth. If they wanted to enter the celestial realm, they would definitely attract the backlash of the laws of heaven and earth. If they did not become immortals, thearchs would not be able to resist the laws of heaven and earth and would die. Since the era of the heavenly venerables, countless heavenly venerables, ancient emperors and thearchs, in order to become immortals and live forever, severed their heavenly core marks and stripped themselves of their positions as thearchs. They were all waiting for the path of immortality to open. Liu frowned as he thought of the 7 forbidden zones in the eastern wilderness. Among the 7 forbidden zones, other than the forbidden zone of the primordial era where Vicious is, there are more than 10 primordial emperors hiding in the other forbidden zones. Once these people break the seal and walk out of the forbidden zone, it will be a disaster. Yes, these primordial great emperors who had severed their lives were the source of all disasters. Since ancient times, every darkness upheaval was caused by the awakening of these existences. Once a great emperor who had sealed himself broke the seal of the source of God and returned to the world, he would use up his already limited life force. Since he had consumed his life force, he naturally had to find a way to replenish it. Then, they would devour the life force of all living beings to replenish themselves. This was the dark turmoil. How many living beings did it take to replenish a great emperor's life force? Billions of planets with life were wiped out in a single breath. Blood flowed and all life was exterminated. This was the extremely terrifying dark turmoil. If all the great emperors come out, the entire universe will be eaten up by them. Liu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Since I'm back, I won't allow such a thing to happen. If anyone dares to reach out, I'll chop off their claws. After making up his mind, Liu looked in the direction of the path of immortality. He saw that there were already signs of a crack in the void. It seemed that the path of immortality was not far away. So, I have to make some preparations. Although he had already taken the Kunlun Immortal Bell, it was still not enough. Great emperors were not pushovers. Even if Liu was a mortal deity, he could not kill a great emperor with one finger. If more than 10 great emperors came out together, it would be troublesome to deal with them. If a few of them escaped, it would be even more troublesome. I have to get Vicious to come over. There's another great emperor with Vicious. It's the original Desolation. This person has to play a role too. Liu turned around to continue talking to Vicious. Just as he turned around, he saw that there was another stone tablet on the other side of the path of immortality. 6 paths of reincarnation fist? A sacred body's fist technique? Liu wasn't shocked by the 6 Tao reincarnations fist. He had long collected this world's cultivation methods and skills, so he naturally understood the 6 Tao reincarnations fist. However, he saw a symbol on this stone tablet, a small pagoda symbol. Desolation? Heavenly Emperor Huang? This place is actually related to Shi Hao? Liu's mind was shaken. This place is called Desolate Ancient Forbidden Land. The existence here has always been called Desolation. Shi Hao is also called Desolation. Heavenly Emperor Huang ruled over endless time, sealing immortal domain, fighting the darkness alone, fighting alone for millions and millions of years. It was unknown just how he was doing now. Liu felt a bit moved inwardly. This world produced heroes in large numbers, generous and heroic, making one feel deep veneration. Then, I will also lend a hand. Sweep away all of the shadows in this world, return a bright world to the people of this world. He reached out his hand to press the heaven-splitter sword at his waist. Li Yu's mind surged with hot blood. Heavenly Emperor Huang ruled over endless time. I can also flatten the heavens with a single sword. Li Yu roared with laughter, the space between his brows glowing with vigor. Staying behind the scenes for a long time, often acting as a dark hand, made Li Yu carry a trace of darkness. Right now, his heroic spirit erupted, the darkness swept clean. His entire being was like a blazing sun that broke through the clouds, erupting with endless radiance. Hot blood hasn't cooled yet, the sword edge is still sharp. This time, I will also properly display my hot blood. Chong chong. Sword cries rushed into the heavens, a grand will rushing into the clouds. Hurring! At this time, the white jade statue-like Vicious raised his eyes, giving Li Yu a look, releasing a light snort, covering up the shock brought about by Li Yu's sword cries. Heh, I forgot myself for a moment. Li Yu laughed in embarrassment, walking up to the Vicious. Where is the great success holy body? He has already sunk into his later years, right? I have a way to save him. The original desolation had already been sealed by Vicious. Li Yu wanted to quell the upcoming dark turmoil, so naturally, he had to accumulate strength. Boom! Vicious flicked his fingers expressionlessly, and the cliff in front of him instantly split open, revealing a figure with thick golden hair all over his body. His mouth was letting out a roar, and he had an extremely terrifying appearance. The curse of the great success holy body, a peerless hero, an existence comparable to the great emperor, has unexpectedly fallen into such an end. It's really sad and lamentable. Li Yu sighed and walked toward the golden-haired monster-like great success holy body. Roar, the great success holy body's later years were unknown. When the curse broke out, his body grew hair all over, and his mind was in a mess. The great success holy body in front of Su Ke was still somewhat clear-headed because of Vicious Seal, and he hadn't really gone crazy. I can save you. Don't resist. Li Yu stretched out his hand, and a huge palm print appeared, grabbing the great success holy body in his hand. Collect. The great success holy body was instantly collected into the resource warehouse, and Li Yu's holy body transformation plan was about to begin. Recommended the reborn starry sky cultivating God. Chapter 505. How could a hero of a generation fall to such an end? Li Yu put the holy physique, who was in his later years, into the resource warehouse and sighed. System, analyze the cause of the holy physique's curse. In the resource warehouse, the 5 colored lights swept through, and the system quickly completed the analysis. The so-called holy physique's later years are unknown. The so-called curse is actually a kind of secret curse technique. To be able to curse a holy physique in his later years, it must be the power of a mortal immortal. Is it a celestial-level dark artifact? Li Yu snorted coldly. System, remove the curse of the holy physique. The 5 colored lights swept through the holy physique's body like a cloud of smoke. The thick golden hair dissipated, and a tall and imposing figure appeared in the resource warehouse. Even though his hair was gray and he was old, the holy physique was still arrogant and majestic. He doesn't have much lifespan left. Li Yu sighed. A hero past his prime always makes people sigh. Turning his head and looking at the celestial ancestor's head in the resource warehouse, Li Yu reached out and grasped it. System, decompose the celestial ancestor's head and extract vitality to pour into the holy physique. The celestial ancestor's head exploded and turned into a golden brilliance that merged into the holy physique. Buzz, golden divine brilliance erupted, and the holy physique's vitality surged like a raging tide. The golden sea of bitterness showed the appearance of a vast ocean. His skin was sparkling and translucent like jade, and his hair was thick and pitch black. The old figure had disappeared, and the imposing figure stood proudly. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. The holy physique seemed to have recovered to its peak, but in fact, it only looked like it on the surface. Liu didn't have enough life origin, and the vitality of the celestial ancestor's head was far from enough. It was impossible for the holy physique to fully recover to its peak. However, there will be a way in the future. Thinking of the ancient great emperors hidden in the life-forbidden zone, Liu sneered. When the time comes, I'll catch a few and extract their life origin. It won't be difficult for the holy physique to recover. With a wave of his hand, a stream of light flashed, and the holy physique, who had recovered its peak appearance, appeared in front of Liu. I recovered? The tall and upright figure stretched out his hands and placed them in front of his eyes. When he saw his sparkling skin and the long golden hair on his body, he trembled in excitement. You are. The holy being raised his head and looked at Liu. Shock flashed in his eyes as if he couldn't believe it. You are the Grand Empyrean? Zhang Xian came back to his senses and hurriedly cupped his fists to greet Liu. Zhang Xian greets the Grand Celestial Venerable. Huh. Hearing the title Grand Empyrean, Liu's heart shook. Grand Empyrean? Me? This name was obviously made up by me on a whim. How did he? You know me? Liu looked at the person who called himself Zhang Xian with a puzzled expression. This junior has seen your portrait before. You are an Empyrean from the chaotic ancient era. I didn't expect you to have lived for so long. You are indeed a true immortal. Immortals really do exist. Zhang Xian, who had a great success holy physique, cupped his fists and saluted with a look of admiration. Huge waves surged in Liu's heart. He felt baffled. Chaotic ancient era? I am of the same generation as Heavenly Emperor Huang? What a joke. When did I go there? There must be a problem. After obtaining the system, the first world he transmigrated to was here. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. He was messing around and snatching things along the way, but he wasn't killed by anyone. There must be a problem. Of course immortals exist. Liu suppressed the shock in his heart and remained calm. He smiled and nodded at the holy being. I have a cultivation technique here. You can try it and see if it is helpful to you. This holy being could be a powerful assistant in the future. Liu naturally had to invest in it. With a flick of his finger, a speck of light entered Zhang Xian's mind. Liu passed the human immortal martial path to the holy being Zhang Xian. Rebirth from a drop of blood, countless changes, shattering the vacuum, immortal body. Zhang Xian was shocked when he saw the martial path cultivation technique in his mind. As expected of an ancient true immortal, the Grand Empyrean's cultivation technique is extensive and profound. Thank you, Sky Sovereign, for your bestowment. Zhang Xian bowed and thanked him solemnly. With this cultivation technique, the indestructible golden body would definitely be able to gain some benefits. It might even be possible for him to reincarnate and live a second life. You go and cultivate first. I'll say a few words to the Empress. Liu sent the great sage body away, turned around and walked to the side of the Empress. He stared at the Empress and gave her a deep look. You've known me for a long time, right? Back then, Liu had collected the immortal medicine, the divine spring, and even the bronze immortal palace. However, the ruthless man did not stop him at all. Even if little Nan Nan came looking for him later, she would only ask Liu for confirmation about Yifan's problem, and wouldn't talk about anything else. From the words of the great sage body Liu, many years ago, he had already existed in this world? However, the Empress did not react at all. Like a white jade statue, he sat there quietly, as if he didn't even breathe. Forget it. Liu curled his lips gloomily. Ruthless was an extremely stubborn fellow. When she didn't want to speak, Liu couldn't do anything about it. The Grand Empyrean definitely involved some secrets. If Ruthless didn't want to say it, it was likely that there were some things that couldn't be said. Whatever secrets there are, there will be a day when they will be revealed. Liu thought about it and didn't care anymore. The immortal path of the ancient desolate forbidden land is a dead end, and it is also the source of the darkness and chaos. With Ruthless and the great sage body overseeing this place, there's no need to worry. Liu nodded towards Ruthless as a greeting. Then, he took a step forward and left the ancient desolate forbidden land. I've been busy for so long, but I still haven't paid attention to that brat Zhou-Yi. I wonder how he's doing now? After leaving the ancient desolate forbidden land, Liu had the system connect to the Book of the Supreme Heavens, of the Book of Changes to understand the situation. Book of the Supreme Heavens, report what happened after I left. After connecting to the Book of the Supreme Heavens, Liu had the Book of the Supreme Heavens report the relevant situation. He's already at the Great Sage Realm? Everyone has just returned from the ancient path of the stars? Seeing the information reported by the Book of the Supreme Heavens, Liu smiled and nodded. Not bad, I didn't nurture him in vain. Zhou-Yi was already in the Great Sage Realm. With a Xianyuan sword, he had fought on the ancient path of the starry sky and made a name for himself. Fan, Li Xiaoman, Pang Bo, and the others also had proud battle record. Fan Xian seemed to be even more extraordinary as he carried little Nan Nan with him. Even though Liu had stolen some things back then, he still had the profound yellow Mother Qi cauldron and still had an undefeated legend. With little Nan Nan accompanying him, it wouldn't be difficult for Ruthless to give him the profound yellow Mother Qi. After all, the Bronze Immortal Palace belongs to Ruthless, so it's not impossible for Ruthless to keep some profound yellow Mother Qi in his hands. Liu's figure flashed as he stepped into the sky. He raised his eyes to look at the location of the Eastern Wasteland's Ji family. At this time, Yi Fan is getting married? Zhou-Yi and the others are all here? Then let's go take a look. Walking in the air, Liu walked towards the direction of the Ji clan with a smile on his face. Chapter 506 Eastern Wilderness. A vast and mighty river stretched across the wilderness, and the torrential river flowed endlessly. This was Ji Shui. Beside this river, there was a family that had shocked both ancient and modern times. It was the family of the Void Emperor, the Ji family. Today, this vast expanse of buildings that stretched for thousands of miles was filled with jubilation. The proud daughter of the Ji clan, Ji Ziyue, married the sacred body of the ancients, Yi Fan. Within the Ji family's encampment, spirit springs gushed, exotic flowers bloomed, immortal clouds lingered, spirit birds soared in the sky, pill cliffs stood tall, waterfalls flowed like silk, and multicolored clouds overlapped. With Yi Fan's current reputation and status, the Ji family was extremely satisfied with this son-in-law. The human clan's saintly body was at the great saint realm. He had never been defeated before and his reputation was unparalleled. He was definitely a good match. Yi Fan's cultivation speed was astonishing. Since his debut, he had advanced to the great sage stage in just over 200 years. In the future, it was inevitable that he would advance a step further. Once his saint physique reached the great success stage, he would be able to suppress the world. Who didn't know about the prestige of the great success holy physique? An existence comparable to a great emperor, what kind of shocking power was this? A person with a great success holy physique could live for at least 10,000 years. An existence comparable to a great emperor was simply a stabilizing force in this turbulent world. The marriage between the Ji family and the saintly being could protect the Ji family for at least 10,000 years. Therefore, even though Yi Fan had some enmity with some people from the Ji clan back then, no one dared to gossip about him at this time. The great thunderclap temple of Mount Meru sends a humble gift. The emperor of the great Xia dynasty has arrived. The saint lord of the Jiang family of the northern region has arrived. Jade Lake's queen mother of the west has arrived. Great figures arrived one after another. On this day, the Ji family was filled with guests. Even the forces that had some animosity in the past had put aside their unhappiness and visited them one by one to present gifts. With such a good son-in-law, we won't have to worry about the future. Some of the elders of the Ji family looked at the grand occasion and smiled while stroking their beards. However, in the next moment, he couldn't bring himself to laugh anymore. The Xianyuan Holy Master, Zhou Yi, and the Yao Princess, Yan Ruyu, have come to congratulate Brother Yi on his wedding. A loud shout was heard, and a brilliant light broke through the sky from the horizon. The light landed on the ground, revealing a handsome young man with a majestic appearance. He was like a bright moon in the sky, like a god descending to the mortal world. A long sword with black and yellow energy circulating around it was hanging from his waist. Beside the man stood a peerlessly beautiful woman who was as pure as a lotus. These two people were naturally Zhou Yi and Yan Ryu. Saint Lord Xianyuan? He's here too? Doesn't he have a bad relationship with the Ji clan? One of the guests discussed in a low voice. Holy Lord Xianyuan has a close relationship with the holy body, so it is inevitable for him to come and congratulate him. Was there a need to have a bad relationship with the Ji clan? Haha. The other person had a strange smile on his face, and there was a hint of ridicule in his laughter. The Ji clan was too ruthless back then. A guest who knew the inside story introduced. It's rumored that Holy Lord Xianyuan came from the outer realm. It is said that they are the descendants left behind by the Void Emperor when he was roaming the universe. I've heard about that too. Another person continued. Back then, Holy Lord Xianyuan came to the Ji clan to acknowledge his ancestors. Who would have thought that not only did the Ji clan not acknowledge him, they even chased him all the way, wanting to kill him. He didn't expect that a great sage would appear in this battle. The Ji clan should be regretting it right now. It is definitely true that Holy Lord Xianyuan is the descendant of the Void Emperor. Not only did he possess the Ji clan's divine body, he also knew the Void Emperor's scripture. Although Holy Lord Xianyuan is famous for his Xianyuan sword, it is true that his foundation originated from the Void Emperor's scripture. When Zhou Yi brought Yan Ryu to the Ji clan, all the guests burst into an uproar. Who in the world didn't know about the case between Holy Lord Xianyuan and the Ji clan? As Holy Lord Xuanyuan's strength advanced by leaps and bounds, the Ji clan's reputation of being blind had long since spread throughout the world and was ridiculed by countless people. Damn it, this rascal! An elder of the Ji clan stared hatefully at Zhou Yi, gnashing his teeth. Shut up! An ordinary-looking young man fiercely reprimanded the elder with a cold face. This young man was the son of the Void Emperor, Ji Zi, who had awakened in this world after being sealed in the divine origin. Little ancestor, this little bastard. He is a descendant of his father's bloodline. If he is a beast, what are you? What am I? Ji Zi stared coldly at the elder. Look at what you have done. He is clearly the pillar of my Ji clan, yet he was forced out by you. Idiot. Yes. Little ancestor is right. The group of Ji clan elders turned pale from the scolding and lowered their heads, not daring to reply. Zhou Yi? It really is you. Yi Fan laughed loudly as he came forward to welcome him. Zhou Yi, you're here too? Li Xiaoman, Pang Bo, and the others also walked over with a smile. Hundreds of years had passed since he stepped into this world from the other side of the starry sky. Some of his classmates had died, some had scattered, and some had returned. Now there were very few people left in this starfield. Yi Fan, Pang Bo, Li Xiaoman, and Zhou Yi were the most dazzling of the group of people back then. Yi Fan and Zhou Yi were already at the peak of the great sage realm. Li Xiaoman and Pang Bo were a bit weaker, but they were already at the Saint King realm. How can I not come to Brother Ye's wedding celebration? Zhou Yi smiled and waved his hand. A dark green human-shaped tree that looked like it was carved out of jade appeared in his hand. As soon as this small tree appeared, a refreshing fragrance rippled out. It was as if an immortal spring was cleansing the air, and endless life force surged like a tidal wave. This is immortal medicine. This is the immortal medicine. Human-shaped immortal medicine? Could this be the legendary immortal medicine of the sovereign emperor? It was actually in the hands of the Holy Lord Xianyuan? When this human-shaped tree appeared, everyone around was shocked, and countless people cried out in alarm. "Brother Yi, this is my wedding gift to you." Zhou Yi smiled as he handed over the human-shaped immortal medicine in his hand. This immortal medicine was a root that Zhou Yi had cut out when he was cutting the origin stone in the northern region. Afterwards, Zhou Yi followed the method given by the Book of the Highest Heavens and planted this immortal medicine. When Yi Fan got married, Zhou Yi naturally had to come and congratulate him. In addition to the conflict with the Ji clan, Zhou Yi naturally had to give the Ji clan some face. Immortal medicine as a congratulatory gift? Holy Lord Xianyuan is so generous. The immortal medicine that only the great emperor can possess is actually used as a congratulatory gift? Holy Lord Xianyuan is indeed heroic. Zhou Yi's extravagance frightened everyone around him quite a bit. This is too precious. When Fan Xian saw this stock of immortal medicine, he felt a wave of emotion in his heart. Ever since this lucky old classmate of his had obtained the favor of the Supreme Tao Ancestor, he had soared into the sky. At this moment, he had become even more unfathomable. What kind of relationship do we have? Why are you saying such polite words? Put it away. Zhou Yi handed the immortal medicine to Yi Fan and said softly, "I'm afraid something big will happen soon. With our current strength, we are unable to protect ourselves. If you take this, if anything happens, it can save your life." It's that serious? Yi Fan also discovered many signs. There were many changes in the life forbidden zone, and the cultivators from the outer realms were constantly rushing to Big Dipper. Something big must have happened. It's more serious than you think. Zhou Yi nodded his head with a serious expression. This time, if something goes wrong, no one will be able to survive. After you get married, let them quickly leave Big Dipper. If they hide, they might be able to escape. Can you escape? Li Xiaoman frowned as she looked at Zhou Yi. I've also heard some rumors. This time, I'm afraid it's useless no matter where you run to. Zhou Yi and Yi Fan looked at each other, speechless. If only Ancestral Master could come back, that would be great. Chapter 507. Where is Yi Fan? Come and receive the decree. At this time, a brown-haired man stood in the air with a proud face, arrogantly shouting down. Hearing this loud shout and seeing this arrogant figure, everyone was unable to restrain their anger. This brown-haired man was a great sage. However, even a great sage dared to be so arrogant and treat everyone as if they were nothing? How preposterous! Where did this bastard come from, a hot-tempered guest, without waiting for the Ji family and Yi Fan to appear, directly raised his voice and cursed. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was so scared that he swallowed it back. Because a piece of paper. The brown-haired great sage opened a scroll that looked like an imperial edict in his hand. The bright yellow scroll was gorgeous and exquisite, shining brightly under the sunlight. This is, everyone in the Ji family, whether it was Yi Fan, Zhou Yi, or the other guests, were all shocked by this scroll. A scroll, even if exquisite and gorgeous, was not shocking. However, this scroll actually emitted the might of an emperor. The supreme sovereign, the ruler of the world, the ruler of the great thousand, the sun and the moon, the mountains and rivers, losing their color. This aura was emitted, causing one's heart to tremble. Many people almost knelt down. Great Emperor, feeling this aura, everyone felt fear in their hearts. They trembled in fear, as if they were facing the ruler of heaven and earth. Who is this? Who became the great Emperor? At this moment, everyone's expression changed. No one was not shocked. The great Emperor's law is here. Why aren't you kowtowing? The brown-haired great sage held the decree in his hand and shouted at the crowd with a face full of arrogance. Great Emperor? Which great emperor? Zhou-Yi turned around and stared at the brown-haired great sage. His palm was already on the Xianyuan sword. An ignorant thing dares to pretend to be the great emperor? Impudent! The brown-haired great sage roared. My emperor is the lord of the divine court. You dare to offend the great emperor. Do you want to exterminate your clan? The lord of the divine court? Zhou-Yi sneered. Any random cat or dog dares to call himself an emperor. Well said. At this moment, a black dog that was as big as a horse, with fur as black as satin, and incomparably handsome, wearing a pair of golden underpants, rushed out with a rumble. Where did this bastard come from? I have followed Emperor Wu Shi to conquer the world. Do you know how noble my status is? You dare to be arrogant in front of me? The black dog rushed out, its eyes as big as bronze bells. It opened its mouth wide, revealing its sharp fangs. I'll kill you. The black dog opened its mouth and spat out. Several formation platforms flew into the sky and surrounded the brown-haired great sage. Boom! Spiritual light blossomed from the runes. Streaks of divine light shot out, tearing the sky apart and crushing everything. This was the no-beginning formation pattern developed by the black dog. Although it was far inferior to the true Great Emperor formation pattern, its power was still extraordinary. Streaks of formation runes crushed towards the brown-haired great sage. Their monstrous power caused the heavens and earth to turn upside down, and the wind and clouds to surge. Humph! The brown-haired great sage laughed coldly, completely unfazed by this overwhelming power. Buzz! A ray of light shot out from between the brown-haired great sage's brows, turning into a pagoda out of thin air. This pagoda had 33 floors and was made of eternal blue gold. This was the exclusive material used by the great emperors to forge weapons. The pagoda hung in the void, sparkling and dazzling. Its aura was majestic, as if the 33 heavens were suppressing the world. The great emperor's aura filled the air, terrifying and monstrous. It turned this place into an immovable divine ground, blocking the power of the formation runes from the formation platforms. An emperor weapon! When this pagoda appeared, countless people cried out in shock. This was an emperor weapon. None of the known monarch weapons looked like this. This pagoda was definitely a newly forged monarch weapon. Could it be that someone had become an emperor? This was too shocking. If this was true, it was enough to make all the sky prides in the world despair. The emperor throne was unique. One person had become an emperor and suppressed the world. There was no chance for anyone else to stand out. Who was it? Who had become an emperor? If someone really became an emperor, it would be equivalent to blocking the path of all the geniuses in this world. This was a piece of news that caused despair. No wonder the brown-haired great sage dared to be so arrogant. No wonder he looked down on the crowd as if they were nothing. With a great emperor behind him, even the life-forbidden zone did not dare to rashly provoke him. Saint Body Yi Fan, on the orders of the Emperor of the Divine Court, I summon you to the Divine Court to listen to his orders. You accept the decree and thank him. With the blue-gold pagoda emperor weapon above his head and the great emperor's decree in his hand, the brown-haired great sage's figure became even more arrogant. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings fell silent. No one dared to answer, no one dared to make a sound. How terrifying was a great emperor! The great emperor that had suppressed the ancient times was not someone that any power could offend. No matter how deep the Ji clan's foundation was, they would not dare to disobey the decree of a great emperor. Below the great emperor, everyone was an ant. The great sage was someone who could be killed with a single slap. In front of the great emperor, Yi Fan, Zhou-Yi, and the others' great sage cultivations were no different from mortals. Zhou-Yi. Xianyuan Saint Master Zhou-Yi? At this time, the brown-haired great sage turned his target to Zhou-Yi. You insulted the great emperor just now, your crime is unforgivable. Kill yourself. Otherwise, your entire family will be exterminated. Commit suicide? The entire family will be exterminated? Zhou Yi gripped the Xianyuan sword, and a cold light appeared on his face. I would like to see who has the ability to do so. Since you're so stubborn, I can only teach you a lesson. The pagoda emperor weapon hanging high above his head trembled. A power that could shake the heavens and earth, shatter space and time, and shatter the starry sky rushed up with a loud bang. A boundless might came crashing down as if the heavens and earth were collapsing. Damn it! Even with the peak strength of the great sage Zhou Yi, he still felt powerless under this power. Hey, who are you? Make way, don't block the way. At this time, a lazy voice sounded in the air. A handsome youth wearing a golden crown, a white robe, and a long sword hanging from his waist walked over with a smile on his face. When the brown-haired great sage heard this frivolous voice and saw this youth's figure, he immediately flew into a rage. The might of the great emperor was right in front of him, yet he still dared to be so disrespectful? What guts! Since you want to die, then I'll grant you your wish. Buzz! The blue-gold pagoda rushed up and smashed down towards the white-robed youth's head. To the surprise of the brown-haired great sage, whether it was Zhou Yi Fan, Li Xiaoman, or Pang Bo, their faces were filled with joy when they saw this youth appear. What shocked the brown-haired great sage even more was that this white-robed youth didn't care about the emperor weapon pagoda at all. You dare to ignore the might of an emperor weapon? Then die. The blue-gold pagoda collapsed the void and smashed down fiercely. And then, the emperor weapon is indeed an emperor weapon, but unfortunately, Master is not a great emperor. It's just a mere peak quasi-emperor. The white-robed youth smiled and shook his head. He stretched out his hand and grabbed, as if he was catching a turtle in a jar and taking something out of his bag. Suddenly, he grabbed the emperor weapon pagoda in his hand. Whang! The emperor weapon pagoda shook crazily and struggled with all its might. However, it was like a fish that had fallen into a net, unable to escape at all. Fellow Taoist, a voice suddenly sounded from within the blue-gold pagoda. This was the owner of the emperor weapon pagoda, the so-called Lord of the Divine Court. This voice was somewhat flustered, as if it was very nervous. Hee. Do you think you have the qualifications to call me a fellow Taoist? With a wave of his hand, the black and white yin and yang fishes brushed past. A miserable scream rang out from the blue-gold pagoda, and the divine will that the Lord of the Divine Court had left behind in the Emperor Weapon Pagoda was instantly annihilated. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked out of their wits. Grabbing an Emperor weapon with his bare hands and destroying spiritual will with a wave of his hand, what kind of existence was this? What kind of cultivation was this? Disciple Zhou Yi pays his respects to the Supreme Ancestor. Greetings, Supreme Tao Ancestor. Greetings, Sky Sovereign. Zhou Yi Fan, Li Xiaoman, and Pang Bo all knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. Sky Sovereign? Everyone around was so scared that their bodies trembled, and they were dumbstruck. There was actually an ancient Empyrean still alive? How was this possible? Alright, the main character's strength must be awesome. It was impossible for him to be awesome all the time and suddenly become soft. You'll know if you keep watching. Chapter 508. Get up! Liu stretched out his hand and waved it, and an invisible force helped Zhou Yi Fan and the others up. In just over 200 years, your cultivation has improved rapidly. Not bad. That's right. Liu smiled as he looked at the four of them and nodded in approval. You are the Grand Empyrean? At this time, the big black dog stared at Liu with wide eyes and shouted in shock. You know me? Liu was surprised again. The large success holy body knew him, and now even the big black dog knew him? This Emperor. Oh no, this junior was fortunate enough to see the portrait of the Sky Sovereign in the study of the great emperor. Sky Sovereign, you know, the great emperor, he's still. The big black dog looked at Liu eagerly, as if he wanted to find out if Liu was still alive. You're talking about no beginning. Liu smiled as he looked at the big black dog and nodded slightly. You should work hard in your cultivation. One day there will be a day when we meet again. Really? That's great. Great. The big black dog let out a strange cry like a wolf howling. His body flashed, and he instantly rushed out, wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf all the way to who knows where. Grand Empyrean? The golden-furred giant ape blinked its golden eyes and tilted its head to look at Liu. I seem to have heard my father mention it before. Only, at that time I was still young, so I don't really remember. So it's the son of the Holy Emperor. Liu greeted the monkey with a smile, but he was secretly shocked in his heart. Even the Holy Emperor Dozhan knew of his existence? At this time, Liu also knew that something must have gone wrong. With so many ancient existences knowing about him, there was only one possibility. One day in the future, he would go against the flow of the river of time and appear in the ancient times. Other than that, there was no other possibility. Sky Sovereign, please take a seat inside. Li Fan and Jizue welcomed Liu into the Ji family's inner hall and sat down in the inner hall. Today is your big day, so I didn't bring any gift. Liu held the blue gold pagoda and smiled. This thing is just right. I'll give it to you as a wedding gift. Ah! Hearing Liu's words, not only was Yi Fan shocked, even Ji Zi and the others who were accompanying him in the inner hall were also shocked. That was an imperial weapon. In an era where no one had become an emperor weapon represented the strongest power in the world. And now, this Lord Heavenly Exalted was actually giving away an imperial armament so casually? That profound yellow cauldron of yours is extraordinary. It already has the potential to become a monarch weapon, so there's no need for this pagoda. However, your wife can use it. Liu smiled and looked at Jizue. Little girl, this bluish gold pagoda is for you. The yin and yang qi in his palm circulated, and the bluish gold pagoda turned into a ray of blue light and shot out, instantly landing between Jizue's eyebrows. I have already finished refining the bluish gold pagoda. You only need the divine soul imprint to refine the bluish gold pagoda. Thank you, Sky Sovereign, for your generous gift. After obtaining this emperor weapon, Jizue's ability to protect herself in this precarious situation became even stronger. Yi Fan and the Ji family were extremely grateful to Liu. Big brother, this person, I think I've seen him before. At this time, little Nan Nan brought a little fatty over, and the two of them staggered over. Little Nan Nan stretched out her white and tender little hand and pointed at Liu. She tilted her head as if she was thinking and recalling. Little Nan Nan, this is the Sky Sovereign. Yi Fan smiled and pulled little Nan Nan and little fatty over. Zhong Ling is elegant and the rhythm of the Tao is natural. Good root. Liu looked at the two little fellows and praised them with a smile. These two little fellows, one was called Divine Baby, and the other was called Divine Baby. They were both fellows with extraordinary backgrounds. Little Nan Nan was the reincarnation of the true spirit of the ruthless, while Little Fatty was the reincarnation of the immortal cauldron's artifact spirit. The current Little Nan Nan did not have a complete memory, so it was naturally impossible for her to recognize Liu. However, back then, Ruthless had met Liu as a Little Nan Nan, so it was very likely that he had left some impression on him. Sky Sovereign, you flatter me. Li Fanxian stroked little Nan Nan's head, very fond of this little sister. You've gotten what you wanted. Seeing the deep affection between the siblings, Liu sighed in his heart. Ruthless hundreds of thousands of years of perseverance can be considered to have reached a conclusion. Although I'm not the big brother from back then, isn't the big brother of this life still a big brother? Ancestral Master, did you come back this time because of the upcoming changes? Zhou Yi and Yen Ruyu sat at the side to accompany him. Zhou Yi asked Li Yu with a happy expression. Indeed. Li Yu nodded, his expression becoming somewhat serious. The current world is a golden era, but it is also a dark and chaotic era. Sky Sovereign, during this period of time, there has been quite a bit of commotion in the Life Forbidden Zone. Cultivators from the outer realms are also constantly rushing towards the Big Dipper. It was said that the road to immortality was about to open. Is that true? GZ's face was filled with worry. If the road to immortality is really about to open, then it will be very troublesome. It's true. The road to immortality is about to open. Li Yu nodded. Before I came here, I went to the road to immortality to take a look. The road to immortality was in the forbidden area of the ancient desolate era. I'm afraid it won't be long before it opens. Ah. Was it really the opening of the road to immortality? Sky Sovereign, is there really an immortal? Fan Xian's face was filled with shock as he hurriedly asked Li Yu. Of course there are immortals. However, this road to immortality. Li Yu sighed and shook his head. This road to immortality is simply a dead end. Dead end? Why is that? Hearing Li Yu's words, everyone present was shocked. This so-called road to immortality is just a crack in the immortal domain. From here, one can't enter the immortal domain. Even the great emperor can't enter the immortal domain. Li Yu looked at the crowd with a serious expression. This road to immortality is a dead end, but it is also the source of chaos. Those ancient existences in the Life Forbidden Zone would definitely have to give it a try before they would be willing. Once they are unable to enter the immortal domain, chaos will definitely occur. Sky Sovereign, do you have any ideas? As the son of the Void Emperor, GZ naturally knew what the existence of the Life Forbidden Zone was. Back then, the Void Emperor had fought all his life and was riddled with scars. It was precisely because of the existence of the Life Forbidden Zone that he came out to cause chaos. The Void Monarch had to pay a heavy price to quell the chaos. Of course there is a way. Li Yu looked at the crowd and nodded. I have something for you to do. Please instruct me, Sky Sovereign. Everyone hurriedly bowed and waited for orders. Zhou Yi, the lady beside you is the descendant of Emperor Qing, right? I'll leave this matter to you. After saying that, a green light circulated in Li Yu's hand and turned into a talisman. The two of you, take my talisman and go to the vicinity of the Spirit Void Paradise's Azure Emperor's Yin tomb. Throw this talisman into the cold pond of the Yin tomb. Li Yu handed the talisman to Zhou Yi. When the time comes, you guys can bring it back. Yes, sir. Zhou Yi and Yen Ruyu hurriedly accepted the order. Yi Fan, make a trip to the Purple Mountain. A jade bottle appeared in Li Yu's hand and he handed it to Yi Fan. Enter the Purple Mountain and pour the blood in this bottle onto the endless scripture. Yes, sir. Yi Fan took the bottle and bowed to accept the order. Pang Bo, bring GZ back to Earth. GZ, remember to bring the Void Mirror. Li Yu handed over a teleportation talisman and nodded towards GZ. After you arrive on Earth, activate the Void Mirror and someone will come to see you. Remember to call the Jiang family's Divine King and have him bring the Eternal Universe Furnace with him. Yes, sir. GZ and Pang Bo also accepted the order at the same time. Li Xiaoman, you've entered the Jade Lake Sacred Ground. Just in time, take my talisman back to the Jade Lake Sacred Ground and insert it into the Jade Lake's Divine Stone Spirit embryo. Yes, sir. Li Xiaoman took the talisman and bowed to accept the order. Very good, whether or not you can salvage the situation, you all are the most important. After completing this, quickly return. At that time, the road to immortality will open. After Li Yu finished making the arrangements, everyone scattered in all directions and set foot on their respective paths. Chapter 509. This is where you were born? The teleportation talisman flashed, and GZ, Divine King Jiang Taishu, and Pang Bo appeared on Earth. That's right. Pang Bo looked at the familiar Mount Tai below him. Looking at this familiar land, he felt a little emotional. The energy of heaven and earth is so thin. Is there anything special about this place? Why did the Heavenly Lord ask us to come here? GZ looked around and saw that this was a prosperous mortal world, but he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Since this is the Heavenly Lord's order, there must be a reason. Let's just follow the Heavenly Lord's instructions. Jiang Taishu waved his hand, and the golden eternal universe furnace appeared in his hand. He turned to GZ and said, "Let's begin." "Okay." GZ nodded and took out the void mirror. A bright light appeared in the sky like a bright moon. The void mirror exploded with a divine light, and a bright moon appeared in the sky. Boom! The eternal universe furnace burst into flames and turned into a scorching sun in the sky. The sun and moon shone together, illuminating the ages. This vast aura swept through heaven and earth, and the entire earth was enveloped in this brilliant light. At this moment, two places in the divine continent exploded at the same time. Yen Ling, Huang Ling. In these two ancient tombs, the two figures sleeping underground slowly opened their eyes. Boom! The void trembled, and two figures broke through the void and appeared in the sky above Mount Tai, in front of GZ and the others. One of them was wearing a yellow robe, and the other was wearing a red robe. The two figures were majestic, and their aura was awe-inspiring. "Father!" GZ looked at the yellow-robed figure with a face full of shock, and his body trembled as he shouted, "Ancestor!" Jiang Taishu looked at the red-robed figure, and his body trembled. "This is Void Emperor and Eternal Universe Emperor?" Pang Bo was dumbfounded. "I am Xianyuan." The yellow-robed figure stood in the void and answered loudly, "I am Shenong." The red-robed figure nodded slightly. Flame Emperor, Yellow Emperor." When Pang Bo heard the names of the two people, he immediately cried out in surprise. "Father, you, ancestor, this is..." GZ and Jiang Tai-su were confused. The two people before him were clearly the Void Emperor and the Eternal Universe Emperor, so why did they call themselves the Xianyuan clan and the Shenong clan? "I am not the Void Monarch." The Yellow Emperor shook his head. "I'm only from the Xianyuan clan. I'm just a Shenong." Yen Emperor also shook his head at Jiang Taishu. This, GZ and Jiang Tai-su looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. The people in front of him were clearly the Void Emperor and the Eternal Universe Emperor. Why did they say that he wasn't? Yen Huang progenitor. At this time, Pang Bo came forward and bowed to the two of them. "Two primogenitors, the world has changed greatly, and a great calamity is about to befall all living beings. I beseech the two primogenitors to be merciful and save them from this calamity." "So that's how it is." The Yellow Emperor looked up at the sky and sighed. "Darkness is coming. I will lead my troops north to cleanse the universe. All living beings suffer. Naturally, I will save him." The Flame Emperor also sighed and nodded at everyone. "Many thanks, primogenitor." Pang Bo was overjoyed and hurriedly kowtowed respectfully. "What's going on?" GZ and Jiang Tai-su were still at a loss. They were clearly the Void Emperor and the Eternal Universe Emperor, so why did it seem like they had become two different people? Xianyuan? Zhou? GZ suddenly thought of the Zhou, who called himself Great Emperor Xianyuan. "Father? Great Emperor Xianyuan? What's going on?" Confused, everyone activated the teleportation rune and returned to the Ji family. "Your Majesty!" Seeing the Yellow Emperor, everyone in the Ji family cried tears of joy and knelt on the ground with a plop. "His Majesty is back! His Majesty is back!" The entire Ji family was in an uproar. Everyone rushed out and knelt on the ground as if they had gone mad. Some cried loudly while others laughed loudly. You are indeed my bloodline. The Yellow Emperor looked at all the kneeling Ji family members and sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, I am not the Void Emperor. I am only from the Xianyuan clan. We were born adults, so there must be karma between us. The karma of our previous lives must be the karma of our current lives. Seeing this, the Flame Emperor shook his head and turned to Jiang Tai-su. Is there a Jiang clan here as well? Yes, primogenitor. The Jiang clan is respectfully awaiting your return. Jiang Tai-su bowed to him with a look of excitement. Then, bring me to take a look. The Flame Emperor sighed inwardly. Ever since they had gained sentience, the Yellow Emperor and Yen Emperor were adults. There must be karma here. The karma of their previous lives must be here. Yes. Jiang Tai-su was overjoyed and hurriedly brought the Flame Emperor back to the Jiang family. Sky Sovereign, GZ requests an audience. In a courtyard of the Ji family, GZ brought the Yellow Emperor to Li Yu. Sky Sovereign, Father, seeing Li Yu, GZ hurriedly asked about the Yellow Emperor. I, the Grand Exalted One, greets Great Emperor Xianyuan. Although this was not the world Li Yu came from, and although he was not that ancestor Xianyuan, Li Yu still held sufficient respect for this person. Xianyuan greets the Grand Exalted One. The Yellow Emperor hurriedly bowed to Li Yu as well. Sky Sovereign, what happened to Father? Why did he become Great Emperor Xianyuan? GZ could no longer suppress the confusion in his heart. Don't worry. Li Yu nodded at GZ. He is your father. However, the Void Emperor's soul has dissipated, and the newly born soul is Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. I see. Yellow Emperor Xianyuan nodded. I was born an adult, but I know nothing about my previous life. I didn't expect such a background. This time, I ordered GZ to invite you back because I have something important to discuss with you. Li Yu looked at Yellow Emperor Xianyuan solemnly. The path to immortalhood is about to open, and darkness is coming. I want to wipe out the darkness, and I need the help of the Great Emperor. Don't worry, Sky Sovereign. I'm duty-bound. Yellow Emperor Xianyuan nodded without hesitation. However, I'm no longer an emperor. I'm afraid I won't be able to help much. You have the body of an emperor. Although your soul has not comprehended the heart of heaven, and you have not obtained the position of an emperor. However, with the Void Mirror, it's enough to fight against an ancient emperor. Li Yu smiled. If you cultivate the Void Imperial Sutra again, you should be able to advance to the next level. Although Yellow Emperor Xianyuan was a newly born intelligence in the body of the Void Emperor, he did not have the memories of the Void Emperor. Although he instinctively grasped some abilities, he did not actually understand the Void Imperial Sutra. If Yellow Emperor cultivated the Void Imperial Sutra again, he would be able to recover all his strength in an instant. Even if his soul had not comprehended the heart of heaven with the Void Mirror, he would be equivalent to a great success Saint Physique. In that case, I'll obey. Yellow Emperor Xianyuan cupped his fists and stood up. He bid farewell and followed GZ to make preparations. Similarly, in the Jiang family of the North region, Yen Emperor Shenong also regained control of the Eternal Universe Furnace and cultivated the Eternal Universe Imperial Sutra again. Everyone was making preparations for the impending dark turmoil. Chapter 510. This is the Ancestors' Yin Tomb. Zhou Yi and Yenryu stood on a cliff and looked down at the cold and dark deep pool below. Yenryu's pretty face had a touch of nostalgia. The ancestor was a hero, but he still couldn't withstand the passage of time. Without becoming an immortal, even a great emperor can't live forever. Immortals definitely exist. Zhou Yi glanced at Yenryu and comforted. Isn't the best proof that the grand ancestor has lived for so long? Immortals definitely exist. Unfortunately, the ancestor couldn't wait until this time. Yenryu sighed and took out the green talisman given by Li Yu. I don't know why Sky Venerable asked us to come here. Could it be related to the ancestor? The ancestor's plan is flawless. There must be a reason for asking us to come here. Zhou-Yi smiled. If you want to know why, won't you know if you throw the talisman out? And Yen Ryu nodded and waved her hand to throw the talisman into the cold pool under the cliff. Buzz, after a trembling sound, endless green light erupted. Azure sea blue sky lotus. The green light that filled the sky was like a vast ocean. In this ocean, a green lotus stood proudly with straight roots, swaying lotus leaves, and blooming lotus flowers. Seeing this green lotus condensed from light and shadow, Yen Ryu trembled all over, and 2 lines of hot tears rolled out of her eyes. This is the ancestor's green lotus. Of course, this was not the Azure Lotus Emperor weapon. After the heart of the demon god and the Azure Lotus Emperor weapon were obtained by Li Yu, the heart of the demon god was refined into a clone, and the Azure Lotus Emperor weapon had already been planted with lotus flowers. This was just a talisman that Li Yu drew the power of the Azure Lotus Emperor weapon to construct. The green lotus image that appeared was just a shadow. Boom! Azure light rushed into the sky, brilliant and dazzling. The green lotus stretched out its lotus leaves and supported the eternal sky. Endless brilliance bloomed, and streams of light meandered around, turning into strange runes that were like dragons and phoenixes. This was the bird seal and dragon seal. Each rune was like the shape of a divine beast, and each rune had the power to shock the world. This was the great Tao of the Azure Thart. This was the Tao law of the Azure Thart. The green lotus emperor weapon was a lotus, and all the power contained within it was under Li Yu's control. At this moment, Li Yu was using the power of the green lotus emperor weapon. It was as though the green emperor was reincarnated. As a descendant of the Azure Emperor, Yen Ryu was shocked to see such a scene. Boom! At this time, a loud noise suddenly erupted from the cold pond below. A brilliant radiance soared into the sky. Within this radiance, an ancient stone pagoda suddenly rose from the bottom of the cold pond. The stone pagoda also erupted with a sky full of green light, and there were also countless birds, dragons, and seals moving about. Similarly, a green lotus that could intimidate all eternity and propel open the blue sky soared up. Ancestor! Seeing this stone pagoda, seeing this scene, Yen Ryu cried tears of joy. The ancestor is still alive. The ancestor is not dead yet. Yen Ryu pulled Zhou-Yi's hand and shouted and jumped, cheering loudly. Buzz! With a buzzing sound, the phenomenon in the sky disappeared. The stone pagoda with green light roared and landed in front of Yen Ryu. A green light burst out from the stone pagoda. Although old, a figure that was still tall and upright appeared in front of Zhou-Yi and Yen Ryu. Greetings, ancestor! Greetings, your majesty, Emperor Qing. Yen Ryu and Zhou-Yi hurriedly bowed to this figure. My descendant? There is also a person from the Ji family? The figure condensed by the light was like a real person. The Azure Emperor glanced at the two and nodded. Are you the ones who woke me up? Ancestor, you are indeed still alive. You are indeed not dead yet. That's great. That's great. Yen Ryu was so happy that he was incoherent. Alive? The Azure Emperor sighed and shook his head slightly. If you hadn't woken me up, I'm afraid I would have died silently in my sleep. Ancestor, you are now. Yen Ryu's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly asked with concern. The path to immortality is cut off, and my lifespan is coming to an end. With the ancient desolate tower as the foundation, I planned to evolve the immortal domain on my own and live forever. I didn't expect that even with my strength and the immortal artifact ancient desolate tower, it was still not enough. The Azure Emperor sighed. If you hadn't woken me up, I'm afraid I would have melted into the ancient desolate tower and disappeared. Now, even if I wake up, I don't have much lifespan left. Your Majesty, the immortal path is about to open. Grand Ancestor ordered us to come and find your Majesty to discuss something important. Zhou-Yi respectfully bowed to the Azure Emperor and explained the reason for this trip. The immortal path is about to open? The Azure Emperor nodded. If it's really the immortal path, it's also good news. If it's not the real immortal path, then it's a disaster. That's right. Zhou-Yi hurriedly said, Grand Ancestor once said that this immortal path is a dead end. A disaster is about to come. Grand Ancestor ordered us to find your Majesty to ask your Majesty to save the world. Grand Ancestor? Could it be the Grand Empyrean? He actually still exists in this world? The legendary senior expert actually still exists in this world? Then I need to pay him a visit. The Azure Emperor nodded, and the light dissipated into a ray of green light and was absorbed into the stone pagoda. The stone pagoda turned and turned into a small gray pagoda that fell into Yen Ryu's hands. Let's go. Bring me to pay my respects to the Grand Empyrean. Yes. Yen Ryu respectfully held up the stone pagoda and pulled open the teleportation talisman with Zhou-Yi. They instantly traveled through the void and returned to the Ji family's encampment. Grand Ancestor, we're back. Zhou-Yi and Yen Ryu brought the stone pagoda and walked into the courtyard where Li Yu lived. Desolate Tower, Azure Emperor. Li Yu saw the desolate tower in Yen Ryu's hands and nodded with a smile. Greetings, Heavenly Venerable. With a flash of green light, the Azure Emperor's figure appeared and bowed to Li Yu. I's Grand Empyrean greets the Azure Emperor. Li Yu also bowed to the Azure Emperor. Using the desolate tower as the foundation to evolve the immortal domain, you've opened up a new path. Unfortunately, this path won't work. Li Yu saw the Azure Emperor's state at a glance. At this moment, the Azure Emperor was just a phantom. His real body had already fallen into the desolate tower and was unable to escape. Heavenly Venerable, do immortals really exist? Have you already become an immortal? The Azure Emperor looked at Li Yu. His dim yellow eyes were filled with longing. He was longing for this answer. Of course immortals exist. Li Yu nodded. Actually, among the many great emperors in this world, you are the one who should become an immortal the most. You are the one who should live forever. I find it a little strange that you can't live forever. I hope Heavenly Venerable can enlighten me. The Azure Emperor's body trembled as he looked at Li Yu in shock. He didn't know what Li Yu meant. Your original body is the immortal medicine. Li Yu shook his head and sighed. You severed your original body and transcended. However, you severed it too cleanly, right? Can't you comprehend something from the immortality characteristic of your original body? Vicious studied the 9 profundity immortal medicine and comprehended the secret of immortality. He lived 9 lives and became an immortal in the mortal world. The immortal medicine was the only thing in this world that could allow one to live forever. The characteristics of the immortal medicine must contain the secret of immortality. As the reincarnation of the Green Lotus immortal medicine, the Azure Emperor had actually forgotten the characteristics of his original body? I see. The Azure Emperor was enlightened. I sought immortality and the path to immortality. However, I didn't know that the path to immortality was already in my hands. Boom! A burst of green flames appeared on the desolate tower. It was as if a blazing flame was burning fiercely. The Azure Emperor's original body in the desolate tower was burning fiercely in the flames. The body and soul of the great Emperor were turned into ashes in the flames. Buzz! The desolate tower shook. A green lotus seed flew out of the desolate tower and floated in midair. The Azure Emperor followed the characteristics of the immortal medicine and reincarnated into a lotus seed. Chapter 511. Ah! Ancestor, when Yen Ryu saw Emperor Qing turn into a lotus seed in the flames, she immediately cried out in alarm. Don't be nervous. Li Yu smiled. Your ancestor will be back soon. After saying that, Liu turned his head to look at Zhou Yi. Brat, you can even give away the immortal medicine as a gift. I believe there are still quite a few fruits from the immortal medicine, right? Ancestor's eyes are not wrong. Zhou Yi hurriedly took out a small human-shaped tree and presented it in front of Liu. This small tree was exactly the same as the one Zhou Yi had given Yi Fan. They were both fruits of the immortal medicine. The great emperor used the immortal medicine to live a second life. He did not swallow the entire immortal medicine, but only the fruit of the immortal medicine. It just so happens that I can use it to help Emperor Qing. Liu reached out to take the human-shaped immortal medicine fruit. With a wave of his hand, the human-shaped immortal medicine instantly turned into a ray of green light, turning into a pure life force. Emperor Qing had already consumed the immortal medicine and lived a second life. Consuming the immortal medicine again would no longer have any effect. However, at this moment, Emperor Qing was undergoing nirvana, and the life force of the immortal medicine was only used as firewood to ignite the fire. With a wave of his hand, the pure life force of the immortal medicine poured into the lotus seed after Emperor Qing's nirvana. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Boom. Green light filled the sky and a vast life force sprouted. As the endless radiance circulated, a majestic figure appeared in the middle of the radiance. A tall and straight body, thick black hair, a vast and mighty aura, and an enormous might. A green lotus propped up the eternal blue sky. Emperor Qing had returned from nirvana. Thank you, Sky Sovereign, for your enlightenment. Emperor Qing respectfully bowed to Liu. No need to thank me. Liu waved his hand. I took away your heart of the Demon Emperor and the Azure Lotus Emperor weapon. This can be considered as settling a karma. Immortals caressed my head and gave me longevity. How can mere external objects compare to this kindness? The Azure Lotus Emperor weapon and the heart of the Demon Emperor were both things that Emperor Qing had given up on. Besides, what was an imperial armament to a heavenly exalted? If a monarch weapon could be exchanged for a chance to live another life, countless great emperors in this world would cry and beg to send over their monarch weapons. Since you've already lived your third life, you'll have to contribute to the dark turmoil this time. Since Liu had found the Azure Supreme Arch, he naturally would not let him stay idle. As you command, Sky Sovereign. After receiving such a huge favor, the Azure Arch naturally would not decline. He naturally had to do his best. Very good. You can go and make your preparations. Liu waved his hand and sent Emperor Qing, Zhou Yi and Yen Ryu out. At this time, Yi Fan had already arrived at the northern region's Purple Mountain. Northern region. In the middle of the vast desert, a majestic mountain towered into the clouds, majestic and majestic. This was the Purple Mountain. Yi Fan, the Grand Empyrean, said that Emperor Wu Shi is still alive. Is that true? The large black dog stood in front of the Purple Mountain, gazing at the majestic Purple Mountain, a little hesitant. What kind of person is Grand Supreme Tao Ancestor? How can his words be false? Fan comforted the big black dog and patted its head. Let's go. Let's go in and take a look. After passing through the passageway, Yi Fan and the large black dog arrived in front of a platform deep underground. The Tao platform was completely silent. That imposing figure with his back facing the common people had long since disappeared without a trace. At the end of the immortal road, who was the peak? This was a great existence that had shocked the ancient and modern times. One with a light sound, a gentle ray of light lingered in the depths of the Tao platform, and a faint emperor chi pervaded the air. Great Emperor! The black dog let out a strange cry and rushed out. Seeing this, Yi Fan hurriedly followed. In a short moment, Yi Fan and the black dog arrived at the depths of the ground and saw the place where the light was rising. The dense vines formed a green curtain. Below the vines was a huge platform, and on the platform was a huge stone book that was about 10 meters long and 4 feet thick. No beginning scripture. Yi Fan and the black dog saw that on this huge book, a speck of light was lingering around it like a swimming dragon. Yi Fan, what did the Grand Empyrean give you? The large black dog asked Yi Fan. Hurry up and take it out. It's a bottle, I don't know what's inside. Yi Fan reached out and took out a jade bottle. He held it in his hand and opened the bottle cap. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. A huge amount of blood chi rushed out of the bottle, and a purple-gold divine radiance blossomed. A vast and mighty radiance swept out, illuminating the entire underground space with a purple-gold color. When under the cover of the purple-gold divine radiance, the huge no-beginning scripture shook violently, and also burst out with a purple-gold radiance, reflecting the light of the jade bottle in Yi Fan's hand. Emperor blood. The blood of the Emperor of the innate saint body. No. It seemed to be even stronger than the Emperor's blood. The black dog looked at the bottle in Yi Fan's hand in shock. Grand Empyrean. You even got this thing out? The Sky Sovereign told me to pour this bottle of blood on the no-beginning scripture. Yi Fan glanced at the black dog and poured the jade bottle in his hand towards the huge no-beginning scripture. A purple-gold torrent rushed out of the bottle and into the infinite scripture. Boom! Endless purple-gold radiance blossomed, and the huge book underwent a huge change in an instant. The huge book instantly shrunk, turning into a foot-long book. The stone on the book also disappeared, turning into a bronze-colored book that was woven with countless metal threads. Ding-dang! With a light ringing sound, the bronze book trembled slightly and slowly opened. Tens of thousands of rays of light, thousands of strands of auspicious chi. In the midst of the gorgeous radiance, the scripture of the no-beginning scripture appeared in front of Yi Fan. The sky was filled with auspicious light. Page after page of the scripture flipped, the world shook, and the great Tao wailed. All things returned to nothingness, the beginning of the world. The grand chanting of sutras rang out. It was as if all the gods and Buddhas were chanting at the same time. One symbol after another flew out, shining brightly, illuminating the mountains and rivers. This is no-beginning technique. The big black dog looked at the scripture with a face full of shock. No, not just the no-beginning technique. Every page of the scripture contains the power of a single attack from the great Emperor of No Beginning. Huh! Yi Fan was dumbstruck. This no-beginning scripture had a total of 12 pages. In other words, it contained 12 attacks from the great Emperor of No Beginning. No wonder the Grand Empyrean told me to come here. With this book, there were 12 spells from the great Emperor of No Beginning. It was equivalent to a great emperor attacking 12 times. Yi Fan's hands trembled as he grabbed the no-beginning scripture in his hands. With the no-beginning scripture protecting me, even if I were to face the sovereign of the life-forbidden zone, I would still have the power to resist. The big black dog nodded and then sighed. If only you had the innate saint body Tao embryo, you would be able to directly inherit the mantle of the great Emperor of No Beginning. Don't worry, the innate saint body Tao embryo will definitely be found. Yi Fan smiled as he glanced at the big black dog. He waved his hand and put away the no-beginning scripture. Let's go, we're going back. Chapter 512. Sky Sovereign, we have retrieved the no-beginning scripture. Leaf. After returning to the Ji family, Fan Xian held the no-beginning scripture in his hand and presented it in front of Li Yu. Not bad. Li Yu nodded. Put it away. With the 12 spells sealed by the great Emperor Wushi, I believe you should have no problem protecting yourself. The spell sealed within the no-beginning scripture was only the power of the great Emperor realm, not the mortal immortal level spell that Li Yu had guessed before. From the looks of it, the great Emperor Wushi became a mortal immortal after entering the gap between the two realms? Li Yu guessed, according to this situation, the immortal emperor and the great Emperor Wushi should have become immortals in the gap between the two realms. Leaf the Sail put away the no-beginning scripture and left with the black dog. Has Li Xiaoman's mission been completed as well? Liu raised his head and looked in the direction of the Jade Lake, a smile appearing on his face. Jade Lake. The ancient tree branches of the immortal peach tree were knotted together, the leaves were sparkling and translucent like jade, and the crown of the tree was surrounded by auspicious clouds. Under the ancient immortal peach tree, there was a divine stone that was about 3 meters tall. The divine stone was born with 9 orifices. It was exquisite and translucent, and its orifices swallowed and spat out the essence of heaven and earth, releasing a brilliant radiance of life. As the light flashed, the figure of a woman faintly appeared within the divine stone. Ice-skinned jade bones, peerless beauty, exquisite and translucent, as if it could wake up at any time and break out of the stone. This was the divine stone spirit embryo of the Jade Lake sacred ground. The divine stone spirit embryo, a holy spirit born of heaven and earth, possessed incomparably tyrannical power. Once it was born, it would be equivalent to a large success saint body, possessing the power of an emperor. More importantly, the divine stone spirit embryo was not a human, but a foreign species. It would be fine if this kind of existence became an emperor. After all, once he became an emperor, he would be the supreme ruler of the world. He would treat everyone equally and would no longer be limited to a certain race. However, if the divine stone spirit embryo did not become a great emperor, it would have the power of a large success saint body. For countless years, the Jade Lake sacred ground had been nurturing this divine stone spirit embryo, trying to influence it. However, Liu did not believe in soft persuasion. Liu was very familiar with the story of the farmer and the snake, but he was not interested in such things. Therefore, Li Xiaoman began to take action. Li Xiaoman took a stroll beside the immortal pond and quietly approached the ancient peach tree. Glancing at the divine stone spirit embryo, his fingertips moved slightly, and the talisman quietly flew out, without leaving a trace, and rushed into the divine stone spirit embryo. There was no sound and no movement. After this talisman was shot out, the divine stone's spirit embryo didn't move at all, as if nothing had happened. In fact, Liu's talisman was only a loyalty mark. How could the influence of foreign species compare to the loyalty mark? Very good. With the mark of loyalty, Liu instantly gained control of the god's stone spirit embryo. The divine stone spirit embryo is still lacking, so let's speed it up a bit. Liu smiled, flicked his sleeves and stood up. With a single step, he traversed thousands of mountains and rivers and arrived at a special place. The holy cliff. The towering mountain was majestic, and it was pitch black, revealing an endless gloomy aura. This was the achievement of a saintly being. He had swept away the dark turmoil and was proud of the world. He had entered the forbidden area of life, the undying mountain, cut off a black mountain, and took it out. However, this great completion saint physique had also fallen here. In his later years, the saintly being had been sneakily attacked by the undying Taoist and died with hatred. On the holy cliff, the blood of the saintly being had stained the cliff, like a bloody river hanging in the sky. It was shocking. On this mountain, a golden notice was sealed on the cliff, and a vast pressure shrouded the cliff. As the golden light lingered, there was a mysterious aura. This is the place. Liu looked up and saw the notice and smiled. The investiture of the gods. This title is really too scary. The so-called investiture of the gods was a treasure refined by the emperor of no beginning to seal the undying Taoist. The undying Taoist had sneakily attacked and killed the saintly being in his later years. The emperor of no beginning was furious and sealed the undying Taoist at the place where the saintly being had fallen as punishment. The so-called undying Taoist had a powerful background. He was an avatar of the immortal emperor. Although he was not a great emperor, he was similar to a saintly being and had the combat strength of a great emperor. What's the use of sealing the undying Taoist here? It's better to feed the divine stone's spiritual embryo. Liu smiled and walked to the edge of the cliff. With a wave of his hand, a stream of light flashed, and the investiture of the gods flew out of the cliff. Together with the undying Taoist sealed in it, they fell into Liu's hands. Fellow cultivator, thank you for saving me, the undying Taoist's joyful voice came from the investiture of the gods. Saving you? You wish. Liu sneered. With a wave of his hand, he put the investiture of the gods and the undying Taoist into the resource vault. A saintly being of great success, Liu looked at a stone coffin sealed on the cliff and sighed as he shook his head. The saintly being's later years are unknown. He was ambushed by the undying Taoist and died with hatred. I think you must be very unwilling in the underworld to accept this. Liu walked to the stone coffin. With a wave of his hand, the stone coffin was put into the resource vault. I will extract the power of your saintly being and integrate it into another saintly being. You two can fight side by side. After putting away the undying Taoist and the saintly being of great success, Liu was about to leave when he suddenly found a small pool outside the Saint Cliff. It revealed the aura of reincarnation of all things and reflected the past and present life. The reincarnation pool? In order to pursue immortality, the ancient supreme being left behind a strange substance after his transformation. This was also a substance of the great emperor level. It's still useful. I'll take it then. Walking to the side of the reincarnation pool, Liu stretched out his hand and pressed. The intertwined black and white light flowed and enveloped the entire reincarnation pool. Absorb. With a pull of his hand, the reincarnation pool flew up and turned into a spring in the yin and yang qi. With a flick of his sleeve, the reincarnation pool fell into the resource vault. Now is the time to feed the divine stone spirit embryo. Liu looked up at the Jade Lake sacred ground. With a step, he crossed thousands of rivers and mountains and arrived at the Jade Lake sacred ground in the northern region. Void form. With the nether beast's magic, Liu's entire body turned into nothingness and disappeared between heaven and earth. No traces of him could be found. Although Liu had many ways to hide his tracks, the nether beast's void form magic was more convenient. Liu walked into the Jade Lake and came under the Saturn peach tree. When he saw the divine stone spirit embryo glowing with divine light, he smiled and nodded. Not bad. After adding the power of the undying Taoist, it will be able to be born immediately. Liu stretched out his hand and pointed a finger at the divine stone spirit embryo. System: decompose the undying Taoist. Extract origin energy and pour it into the divine stone spirit embryo. He gave the system an order in his mind. An array of light fell into the divine stone spirit embryo. The power of the undying Taoist, which was equivalent to the great sage constitution, was instantly poured into the divine stone spirit embryo. Bang! 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 With the injection of this power, the divine stone spirit embryo grew rapidly. Flesh, blood, bones, and soul were all born. In a short while, the divine stone spirit embryo had grown to its peak. Crack! The outer layer of the stone cracked, and a pure white light shone out from the cracks. Crack! Crack! The cracks became bigger and bigger. After a while, the divine stone broke into pieces and bloomed like the petals of a lotus. Inside the cracked god stone was a beautiful figure with skin of ice and bones of jade. She stood tall and straight, like a snow lotus on an ice mountain. A sacred spirit born from the Guanghan white jade? So it is the same type as the stone man. Liu nodded. Since it is the Guanghan white jade, I will name you Wang Shu. Thank you for the name, my lord. Wang Shu greets my lord. The beautiful woman bowed down to Liu. Chapter 513. Stay in the Jade Lake sacred ground for now. When the divine stone spirit embryo broke out of its shell, the commotion it caused had already alarmed everyone in the Jade Lake sacred ground. At this moment, streaks of light shot out, piercing through the air and flying over. The divine stone spiritual embryo, Wang Shu, was just Li Yu's backup plan. When it was time to use it, he would summon it. Yes, Wang Shu replied and stood quietly under the immortality peach tree, waiting for the people from the Jade Lake to arrive. The spiritual embryo is born? Why is it so early? The Jade Lake sacred ground flew over in shock. After a while, a large group of women gathered around and chattered nonstop. You guys have fun. Li Yu smiled and left the Jade Lake sacred ground. I've done all the preparations. This time, I'll make those sovereigns of the Forbidden Lands suffer. Li Yu flew across the sky and landed in the Forbidden Land of the remote antiquity. Master, you're here. Zhang Xian, the great sage sacred body, hurried over when he saw Li Yu. The Forbidden Land of the remote antiquity was still the same. Vicious was still sitting at the side, pretending to be a statue, and the desolate slaves were still wandering in the abyss. I haven't seen you for a few days. You seem to have recovered a little. Li Yu looked at Zhang Xian and saw that his qi and blood seemed to be more vigorous. It seemed that the human immortal martial path was very suitable for the sacred body. The martial path cultivation method that you taught me is very extraordinary. I've learned a lot after 2 days of cultivation. Zhang Xian was very surprised by the progress of his strength. The battle is about to begin. You need to recover as soon as possible. How about this? I'll help you again. Li Yu disintegrated the fallen sacred body that the holy cliff had taken. He extracted the pure power of the sacred body and sent it into Zhang Xian's body. Thank you, Master. As the power entered his body, Zhang Xian's qi and blood surged and shot up into the sky. Zhang Xian quickly sat down cross-legged and used his cultivation method to digest the power. Take your time to refine it. Li Yu waved his hand and walked toward Vicious. Vicious was still as motionless as a statue. The path to immortality is about to open, and this place is about to become a battlefield. Why didn't the great emperor make any preparations? At the very least, you should have taken back the immortality medicine, right? Li Yu looked at the 9 mountains surrounding the abyss and thought back to when he had plucked the holy fruits and divine spring water. He couldn't help but laugh. Finally, there was some movement from Vicious. She raised her head to look at Li Yu, and then, there was no more movement from her. All right. Li Yu shook his head. There was no need for him to worry about Vicious. The path to immortalhood is about to open. I have to dig a good hole. Li Yu had already made his preparations. If he didn't make things difficult for them on the path of immortalization, he would be letting down his title as the mastermind. He walked up to the stone tablet of the road to immortality. Looking from this direction, the stone stele of the road to immortality and the stone stele of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist stood side by side, as if forming a door. Could it be that many years ago, this really was a road to immortality? Countless years ago, the spatial rift to the immortal realm had appeared here. It was very likely that the spatial rift was large enough for people to enter the immortal realm. That was why the ancients had built a road to immortality here. Of course, the greater possibility was that all the ancients who had entered the road to immortality from here had died. Do you think the immortal realm is that easy to enter? Even if you enter the gap between the 2 realms, without 3 worldly immortals working together, you won't be able to break through the barrier and enter the immortal realm. Ordinary great emperors can only dream of entering the immortal realm. Li Yu looked at the faintly appearing spatial rift and smiled. The great emperors of the forbidden regions think this is a road to immortality, but it's actually a dead end. So I'll let you die a bit more thoroughly. Water-like flowing light rippled, and Li Yu's figure seeped into the space crack that was about to appear like a watery light. Through the spatial rift, Liu entered the road to immortality that was about to take shape. Immortal lights swirled in front of him like dazzling auroras, multicolored and dazzling. Ethereal and profound, clear and aloof. These immortal lights seemed to represent immortality and longevity. Immortal light is the natural chi of the world that seeped into the immortal realm. In essence, it's a level higher than the natural chi of this world. It's a bit like immortal chi. Reaching out, Liu grabbed a ray of light and brushed it with his yin and yang chi, dispersing it instantly. Liu already had a clear understanding of the nature of the immortal light. There was an immortal pass in front of him. Countless immortals, demons, monsters, and soldiers guarded the pass with murderous intent. A projection of the world's laws? The immortal pass, the immortals, demons, and soldiers weren't real existences, but imprints of the world. The rules of this world were a bit special. Powerful heavenly tribulations would manifest physical imprints. For example, ancient great emperors, great emperor weapons, immortal treasures, or the elixir of immortality. If the immortal realm is damaged, the world will not allow one to ascend to immortality. Going against the heavens would definitely result in a violent backlash from the world's laws. These immortal soldiers and horses are similar to heavenly tribulations. Liu smiled as he looked at the immortal pass in front of him. His figure flashed, and his entire body turned into nothingness, disappearing without a trace. This was turning into nothingness. Liu wanted to trick those great emperors, so he naturally wouldn't open a path for them. Naturally, he wouldn't fight with the immortal pass soldiers. Turning into nothingness, he merged with the world around him, becoming one with it. The Nether Beast's ability was very unique. Even when Liu passed through the immortal pass formed by the world's laws, he didn't cause any commotion. After passing through the immortal pass silently, Liu continued forward. Not long after, the path ahead was cut off. A huge chaotic void blocked the path. The path to immortality was cut off. As expected, this isn't a spatial crack to the immortal realm. With Liu's current cultivation level, he could naturally see the essence of this chaotic void. The chaotic void in front of him was actually a world that had yet to be opened, or a space that had returned to chaos. Celestial Emperor Huang cut open the world with a single sword, separated yin and yang, destroyed time and space, and isolated the source of darkness. This chaos, could it be the chaos that Celestial Emperor Huang cut open? Thinking of the small pagoda mark in the forbidden land of ancient desolation, Liu felt that this was quite possible. Forget it, it doesn't matter if it's the chaos that Celestial Emperor Huang cut open. Liu smiled and shook his head. With a wave of his hand, a palm-sized palace appeared in his hand. Eternal immortal abode. This immortal abode that I refined should be enough to trick people. A strange smile appeared on Liu's face. With a wave of his hand, the eternal immortal abode entered the chaotic space. Ding-dang, the sound of the heavens was vast and mighty, and the great Tao resonated. Immortal clouds lingered, and thousands of auspicious auras flowed. In the endless immortal light, Luan phoenixes cried, dragons soared, and tigers leaped. The sky was full of auspicious clouds, and a magnificent heavenly palace loomed in the clouds. With such a scene, who would believe that it's not the immortal realm? Even if I told them that it's fake, no one would believe me, right? Liu had a strange smile on his face. That's why I opened the net and waited for you to come to me. Chapter 514. Let's add some insurance. The Eternal Divine Palace was the combination of the Kingdom of Eternity, the Heavenly Tomb, and the Immortal Steel. Although it was extraordinary, it wasn't enough to seal a group of emperors. The Kunlun bell is just right. Liu took the Kunlun bell from his waist and waved it into the Eternal Divine Palace. Didn't Liu specially find the Kunlun Immortal Bell for this moment? With the Kunlun Immortal Bell and the Eternal Immortal Manor, it would be difficult for those emperors to come out once they entered. The arrangements are complete. I'm just waiting for them to come to me. Liyu's body blurred. He went out of the path of deity and returned to the forbidden land of antiquity in an instant. It's time to act. Liyu raised his eyes to look at the horizon as a sneer appeared on his face. With a wave of his hand, numerous transmission talismans tore through the void and flew out. The Ji family. The messaging talisman tore through the void. Great Emperor Xianyuan waved his hand and caught the messaging talisman. Great Emperor Xianyuan, take the void mirror with Emperor Yen and head to the outer space. Keep an eye on the underworld. You don't have to do anything. Just keep an eye on them. Liyu's voice came from the message talisman. Understood. Emperor Huang Xianyuan grabbed the void mirror and soared into the sky, rushing towards the starry sky. At the same time, Emperor Shenong also received the same message talisman and rushed to the outer space with the Eternal Universe Furnace. Wang Shu, go to the outer space and keep an eye on the underworld with Emperor Yen and Emperor Huang. Wang Shu also received Liyu's message in the Jade Lake Sacred Ground. Remember, if they come to the path of immortality, don't worry about them. If they don't come out, keep an eye on them. Don't let them come out and cause trouble when I attack. Understood. Pure white light shot up as Wang Shu charged into outer space. He met up with Emperor Yen and Emperor Huang and rushed towards the underworld. In the underworld, other than the unscrupulous Taoist Duanda, the underworld emperor who had left, the prison suppression emperor, the underworld artifact spirit, origin god, and origin ghost were all supreme existences. None of them were good. It would be fine if these people came out to challenge the immortal ascension road. However, if they didn't come, it would be very troublesome if they came out to cause trouble when Liyu was dealing with the great emperors who challenged the immortal ascension road. With Wang Yishu and Emperor Yen and Emperor Huang holding them back, even if they were not strong enough, they could at least buy some time until Liyu could free himself. Zhang Xian. Liyu called out to the great success holy being in the forbidden area of remote antiquity. What orders does Sky Sovereign have? After absorbing the power of the holy cliff's fallen saint body, Zhang Xian's blood qi grew a little. If he unleashed his full power, he would be able to recover his full strength. Don't tell me you don't know the location of the tyrant body's ancestral star? Go, meet up with Yi Fan and make a trip to the tyrant body's ancestral star. Keep an eye on the 3 large success tyrant bodies sealed in the immortal origin for me. Liyu naturally wouldn't ignore the 3 disasters of the large success tyrant body. He definitely had to keep an eye on them and not let them come out to cause trouble. At the Ji clan's encampment, Yi Fan also received the message talisman. The Sky Sovereign wants me to go to the tyrant body's ancestral star? Yi Fan nodded, grabbed the endless scripture, and jumped up, rushing towards the starry sky. With the 12 endless arts in the endless scripture, there would definitely be no problem for Yi Fan and Zhang Xian to join forces to restrain the tyrant body's ancestral star. Emperor Qing. The communication talisman broke through the air and landed in the courtyard where Emperor Qing, Zhou Yi and Yen Ruyu were. What orders does Sky Sovereign have? Emperor Qing and the other 2 hurriedly stood up and waited for Liyu's instructions. Emperor Qing, take the desolate tower and head to the starry sky to await orders. After receiving my message, you will use the desolate tower to seal the entire Big Dipper star field. Remember, you must completely seal it off and not let anyone escape. Wan Qing understands. Emperor Qing solemnly nodded in agreement. Zhou Yi, disciple is here. Zhou Yi stood up with his sword and waited for his orders. Go to the flying immortal star. Remember, you only need to stay near the flying immortal star field. Don't go too deep into the flying immortal star field. You don't need to care about anything, just stay there and guard it. Yes, sir. Zhou Yi bowed and accepted the order. Following which, Emperor Qing and Zhou Yi moved together, rushing to their destination according to Li Yu's arrangements. The reason why Emperor Qing used the Desolate Tower to seal the Big Dipper star field was to prevent the Life Forbidden Zone from escaping. Since it had been activated, Li Yu naturally had to completely wipe out the Life Forbidden Zone. He couldn't leave these scourges behind. As for Zhou Yi going to the Flying Immortal Star, that was another consideration. The Flying Immortal Star was the true path to immortality. This place was left behind by the sovereign emperor, and there were also 3 ancient sovereigns sealed within. Li Yu let Zhou Yi go over, just to keep an eye on that place to prevent any accidents from happening. If anything were to happen, Li Yu would be able to use Zhou Yi's Supreme Heavenly Book system as a transfer point and directly attack from afar. Even if there were any unforeseen events, he would still be able to deal with them in time. There's still a very annoying guy in this world. Li Yu reached out and took off the Heaven Splitter sword from his waist. Heaven Splitter, you guard outside. Once you see the undying Heaven Blade appear, chop it up for me. Clang. The Heaven Splitter sword let out a sword cry as it whistled through the air and rushed into the starry sky. The undying Heaven Blade that the immortal Emperor had left behind in this world was a peak Emperor weapon that was about to become an immortal weapon. If he didn't keep an eye on it, it would be very troublesome if it took the opportunity to cause trouble. Everything that needs to be done has been prepared. Li Yu was waiting in the forbidden area of the ancient desolate land, waiting for the people sent to various places to be in position before he could make his move. Sky Sovereign, we are already in position. Wang Shu and Emperor Yan sent a message through the communication talisman. Sky Sovereign, we have already arrived at the Tyrant Body Ancestral Star. Large Success Saint Body Zhang Xian and Yi Fan were also in position. Ancestral Master, I have already arrived at the Flying Immortal Star Field. A message came from Zhou Yi. Sky Sovereign, Wan Qing will follow the orders of the time. Emperor Qing held the Desolate Tower in his hand and waited in the sky. Very good, everything is ready. Then let's open the curtain. Li Yu took a deep breath and turned to look at the ruthless man who was still sitting quietly in the forbidden area of the ancient desolate land. He smiled and said, Great Emperor, if you don't put away the immortal medicine, you will be in trouble later. Ruthless still did not respond at all. Alright, I've already reminded you anyway. Li Yu shrugged his shoulders and walked in front of the stone tablet on the road of immortality. If I let this spatial crack open on its own, I'm afraid I'll have to wait a few more years. I can't wait that long. Li Yu glanced at the faintly visible spatial crack and extended his hands towards it. Heaven tearing! Both of his hands fiercely pierced into the spatial crack that was about to take shape. A huge force suddenly erupted as his hands separated and tore apart. Hiss, like a piece of cloth being torn apart, a tearing sound rang out in the air. This spatial crack that was about to take shape was instantly torn apart by Li Yu into a huge crack that was 3,000 meters long. Boom! A vast and mighty radiance soared into the sky, and endless immortal light violently erupted. The road to immortality has opened. Seeing this ray of light and the immortal light that filled the sky, everyone in this world was alarmed. Immortal Ascension! Immortal Ascension! Quick! Go quickly! One figure after another broke through the air and rushed towards the forbidden area of the ancient desolate land. The curtain had been pulled open, and the big hole had been dug. Chapter 5:15. Boom! At this moment, a mighty light rushed out of the 7 forbidden zones at the same time. The divine radiance was vast and mighty, shooting straight into the sky. The Emperor's aura was awe-inspiring. Even though there was only a trace of it, it was enough to shake heaven and earth. The terrifying Emperor's aura made countless mortals and low-level cultivators tremble. Had the path to immortality opened? All the cultivators in the world were shocked and trembled all over. How tempting was becoming an immortal! Immortality was the pursuit of all cultivators. The opportunity to become an immortal had appeared. This day had finally arrived. However, ordinary cultivators did not dare to act rashly. Since the supremes of the 7 forbidden zones had already awakened, no one dared to act rashly before these supremes made a move. Roar! A mighty roar shook heaven and earth. In the primordium ancient mine of the 7 forbidden zones, a huge figure rushed out of the fog and revealed its true appearance in front of everyone. It was a silver Qilin. It was dazzling and majestic, and its light filled the sky for tens of thousands of miles. Heaven and earth shook, and the world was shocked. The divine power of this Qilin made heaven and earth tremble, and all living beings trembled. This is the ancient Qilin Emperor. When this mighty Qilin appeared, everyone who saw this scene trembled all over, and their hearts were shocked to the extreme. The Emperor's aura and power had finally appeared in this world. The silver Qilin's body was surrounded by immortal light. In a flash, it had already arrived in the forbidden zone of the ancient antiquity and arrived in front of the big crack on the path to immortality. Staff, come! The Qilin roared, and its body emitted a dazzling light. In the light, a silver-haired figure with an imposing aura walked out. The void shook violently, and a blue light broke through the sky. A blue-gold Qilin staff fell into the hands of the ancient Qilin Emperor. At the same time, in the immortal mausoleum of the 7 forbidden zones, a golden light crossed the sky like a rainbow bridge. An ancient war chariot drove out of the golden rainbow bridge. A Taoist sat cross-legged on the ancient war chariot with an ancient longsword on his knees. This person wore a purple gold crown and a Taoist robe. His grayish-brown hair was scattered, and the scene of the destruction of the sun, moon, and stars appeared in his eyes. This person was one of the 9 heavenly venerables of the mythological era, Heavenly Venerable Chong Xing. The war chariot broke through the air, and Heavenly Venerable Chong Xing instantly arrived in the forbidden zone of the ancient antiquity. The undying mountain was filled with energy. A figure covered in black armor was riding on a huge divine tiger. This person held a pitch-black halberd in his hand. It was a halberd forged from black dragon-patterned gold. The halberd was pitch-black like ink, piercingly cold, ghastly, and terrifying. It seemed capable of tearing space apart and shattering a myriad of stars. This person was a stone golem who had achieved the Tao, and was known as the Stone Emperor. Amidst the vast and mighty divine light, the Stone Emperor rode on his giant tiger and traversed through the void, arriving in front of the forbidden area of the ancient desolation. Then, the Supreme of the Ruins of God, the Master of Reincarnation, the Supreme of Light and Darkness, and the Sky-abandoning Supreme, the 4 ancient emperors, all appeared at the same time and arrived at the road of immortality. 7 great monarchs appeared at the same time. Their majestic monarch aura shook the void, frightening all living beings. The path to immortality has indeed opened. A huge crack hung in the void ahead. Immortal light danced in the sky like brilliant firework. Amidst the dazzling light, the towering heavenly palace was faintly discernible. Celestial clouds lingered around it, and the light was boundless. There were luans and phoenixes chirping in harmony, and true dragons soaring in the sky. In a trance, a corner of an incomparably vast immortal realm vaguely appeared. After countless years of waiting and countless years of hardship, I've finally waited for this life. Finally, this day has arrived. The ancient Qilin Emperor raised the Qilin staff in his hand. In this life, I must become an immortal. We will definitely embark on the path to immortality. Heavenly Venerable Longevity smiled as he stroked his sword, his eyes shining brightly. This great empress, the Stone Emperor, held his halberd and turned his head to look at the white-robed great empress sitting at the bottom of the abyss. He frowned. Humph! As if sensing the Stone Emperor's gaze, Vicious snorted coldly and slowly stood up like a statue. Boom! Vicious waved his hand, and the 9 majestic sacred mountains around the abyss rumbled loudly. One after another, large cracks appeared on the 9 mountains. The 9 sacred mountains were cracking and shattering. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Rays of light shot up from the 9 sacred mountains. The 9 divine herbs that grew on the 9 sacred mountains rose from the ground amidst the rays of light, turning into blazing balls of light that shot into the sky. The 9 divine herbs were all dazzling, and their leaves were translucent as they emitted an eternal glow. Boom! The great Tao rumbled, and the sky was filled with a dazzling rain of light. The 9 divine herbs turned into rays of light and merged into one, forming a huge ball of light. The ball of light hung in the air, and it was dazzling as if it were a sun hanging high in the sky. Boom! The ball of light suddenly exploded. The 9 divine herbs merged into one, and an immortal herb was formed. The immortal herb was about 2 feet tall. Its bark was like dragon's scales, and its branches were knotted together. It had a total of 9 branches, and each branch was like a phoenix spreading its wings. The leaves had 9 different shapes and 9 different colors. This was the 9 profundity immortal herb. Boom! The 9 sacred mountains collapsed, and the ground caved in. The former forbidden area of the Antiquity era had completely collapsed when the path to immortality opened, turning into a vast depression. At the end of the depression, a huge stone tablet stood majestically, and 3 large words were engraved on it: Path to Immortality. This great empress is quite tactful. The stone emperor sneered. Although the path to immortality is in the forbidden area of the Antiquity era, it's not a place that she can monopolize. It's quite tactful of her to give way early. Boom! The stone emperor hadn't even finished speaking when a slender hand that was as translucent as white jade tore through the air and slapped down at the stone emperor. You dare to attack me? Do you think I'm afraid of you? The stone emperor sneered as he raised his halberd and slashed at the white hand. Boom! The slender hand and the pitch-black halberd collided, and a shocking explosion erupted, releasing a dazzling light. If it weren't for the presence of the other ancient emperors, who used their own strength to suppress the impact, the entire Big Dipper starfield would have been pulverized. Pfff! The stone emperor's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he staggered back a few steps. The other ancient emperors were shocked to see the stone emperor spitting out blood and being injured by vicious attack. Even if the stone emperor had severed his own saber and was no longer at his peak, he was still injured by a single blow. However, to be injured by a single strike, the strength of this empress was actually so terrifying? Very well. I haven't suffered such a loss in a long time. The stone emperor roared, and his hair stood on end. His eyes shone with a cold light like a bolt of lightning. The black halberd shone with a dazzling light as the stone emperor stepped forward, ready to fight with Vicious. The path to immortality is about to open. Why are the two of you fighting so pointlessly? Let's stop. The other ancient emperors quickly stopped the two of them from fighting. Once the two emperors started fighting, it would definitely affect the path to immortality. If the path to immortality was damaged because of the battle, it would be very troublesome. The ancient emperors naturally wouldn't take such a risk, and they quickly stopped the two of them. The stone emperor put away his halberd angrily. Vicious also ignored the stone emperor. The path to immortality has appeared. Everyone, the opportunity to become an immortal is right before your eyes. The ancient Qilin emperor raised his Qilin staff and pointed at the crack in the void. He roared, "Become an immortal!" Boom! A dazzling light shot up as the ancient Qilin emperor took the lead and struck at the crack in the void with his staff. The battle for the path to immortality had officially begun. Those who thought the main character was weak, stop messing around and watch first. The main character was so strong that it scared people to death. How could he be weak? Chapter 5:16. When the Thearchs attacked, heaven and earth trembled. The 7 paragons joined forces to attack. This was unprecedented in history. Boom! Heaven and earth cracked and the void collapsed. Endless light erupted, more dazzling than 10,000 suns. The 7 paragons joined forces, shocking the universe and suppressing eternity. In the crack on the path of immortality, laws intertwined and light flowed. The 7 Thearchs joined forces and entered the crack, flattening the laws. The 7 paragons stepped onto the path of immortality. The immortal pass stood in front of them like a majestic city. Countless immortals, demons, and monsters raised their weapons and roared. Vast killing intent covered heaven and earth. Screech, a huge red divine bird, rushed out of the immortal pass. This was a vermilion bird. Although it was not its true form and was only formed by laws, its power was not inferior to that of the Thearchs. Kill! The paragons attacked together. It was as if the heavens were about to be destroyed. The stars shook and the void trembled. 7 mighty divine lights shot out, smashing the vermilion bird formed by laws. Its feathers flew everywhere, and it exploded into a rain of light. However, this was only the beginning. In the immortal pass, endless light soared into the sky. Figures of gods and demons rushed out with monstrous power. These gods and demons were all formed by laws. Kill all of them! The ancient Chelan emperor roared, and the blue-golden divine staff suppressed the surroundings. With a slash, millions of corpses fell. Millions of gods and demons were reduced to ashes. The Thearchs joined forces and fought fiercely. Their power was unstoppable. Kill! The figures of gods and demons in the immortal pass seemed to be endless. After killing millions of gods and demons, thousands of soldiers and horses swarmed out in an instant. Thousands of soldiers and horses covered heaven and earth, and the vast killing intent caused heaven and earth to tremble. Slaying with a sword. The immortal sword in heavenly venerable Chang Xing's hand whistled. With a slash of the sword, heaven and earth changed color, as if heaven and earth were being split open. The immortal sword swept past, and flesh and blood splattered. Immortals and demons were exterminated. Millions of gods and demons and tens of millions of soldiers and armor could not stop the 7 paragons at all. They soon arrived in front of the immortal pass formed by laws. Kill! The halberd in the stone emperor's hand smashed down heavily on the grand pass, striking it squarely. Heaven and earth cracked and the surroundings shook. Crack! The gate shook violently and a huge crack appeared. At the same time, the other supreme martial artists also made their moves. Boom! With a loud bang, the majestic city gate tower collapsed. The impregnable pass collapsed. Immortal light rushed into the heavens, tearing apart the 9 heavens and 10 earths, shaking up the mortal world. Where's the road? Where is the path to immortality? The impregnable pass was shattered, and the great city was flattened, but there was no road ahead. The road to immortalhood was cut off. After waiting for so long, was it all for naught in the end? If there's no path, then I'll make one. The ancient emperors roared in anger. Beams of earth-shattering divine light blasted into the void, opening up a path to the immortal realms. After hundreds of millions of years of waiting, the path to immortality was right in front of them. How could they give up? The 7 supreme beings erupted with all of their strength. They hacked open the immortal path and advanced courageously, until they reached the end of the path. At the end of the path to immortality is a chaotic void. A huge hole filled with endless primal chaos appeared in front of them. There was no way out. Was this the end? Where was the celestial realm? Ding-dang, the heavenly music was vast and mighty, and the great Tao resonated. In the chaotic void, multicolored light bloomed, tens of thousands of auspicious clouds, and thousands of auspicious auras. Under the cover of the primal chaos, a gorgeous heavenly palace was faintly discernible in the light. Luans and phoenixes sang together, and true dragons soared in the sky. The vast immortal realms seemed to reveal a mysterious corner. The immortal realms. That's the immortal realms. After searching for countless years, the path to immortality is right in front of us. Immortalhood. Immortalhood. The seven supreme beings were wild with joy when they saw the scene in the primal chaos. Let's go. Let's go. We'll become immortals today and live for eternity. We'll be immortal forever. Everyone laughed and rushed toward the immortal palace in the primal chaos. They plunged into a huge hole. It's really the immortal realms? They entered the immortal realms. In the seven forbidden zones, the other supreme beings who were watching this scene couldn't sit still. Is the immortal realms really here? It shouldn't be. Even though they saw this scene, there were still some supreme beings who didn't move. Because these supreme beings firmly believed that this path to immortality wasn't the real path to immortality. Let's do it. At this moment, another 4 figures rushed out from the life-forbidden zone. They turned into brilliant rays of light and soared into the sky, rushing into the immortal realms. The 4 figures were unstoppable. They killed gods and demons, shattered armors, and shattered laws. Braving the brilliant rain of light, they also rushed into the primal chaos hole. The primal chaos was silent. There was no more sound. The 11 ancient emperors rushed into the primal chaos hole, rushed into the vast immortal light, and rushed into the majestic heavenly palace. They really entered the immortal realms? Everyone who was watching this scene was speechless. They were both expectant and nervous. However, no one else came out of the forbidden zones. No one's coming? Li Yu, who had turned into nothingness with the void ability and was hiding at the side, frowned slightly. You're cautious. I was going to catch all of you in one fell swoop. Li Yu sneered. He was about to make a move when something unexpected happened. Amit Ba. A Buddhist chant shook heaven and earth. On Mount Meru, endless power of faith surged like a raging tide. A great Buddha sat cross-legged at the top of the mountain, his divine power reaching the heavens and the earth. Thousands of auspicious auras, endless rays of light, endless power of faith surged, even more vast than the ocean. If I attain Bodhi, all living beings in the heavens and realms will receive endless light, endless life, and endless blessings. The mighty vow spread throughout the entire universe. At this moment, on the other side of the starry sky, in the wilderness of the universe, as long as it was a land of Buddhism, endless power of faith gathered, covering the sky and earth. Like a sky full of light rain, the power of faith gathered from all corners of the universe and fell on Mount Meru. Countless light rains sprinkled all over the sky. Buddha is merciful. He transcends all suffering and saves all living beings from the sea of suffering. Are you willing to follow? Amit Ba. Hundreds of millions of believers chanted the name of Buddha in unison and stepped into Mount Meru. Boom! Mount Meru rose from the ground, emitting a monstrous Buddhist light. It carried billions of Western Desert Buddhist believers and rushed into the path of immortality, rushing into the primal chaos hole. D***eminent. How could he do this? When Li Yu saw this scene, he frowned deeply. The Amitabha Emperor's original body had been destroyed long ago. This Buddha was a clone formed by the power of faith. He actually brought billions of believers to the path of immortality? He was obviously playing with fire. Most of these believers were ordinary people. When they were on the path of immortality, they would all die if there was a slight tremor. How could he disregard the lives of his believers for his own path of immortality? Was he still a Buddha? Where was his benevolence? Since you are so cruel, don't blame me for being merciless. Li Yu snorted and flicked his finger, sending a message to the Lotus Arch. Lotus Arch, seal the entire Big Dipper. Yes. The Lotus Arch replied and waved his hand, sending the ancient desolate tower in his hand into the Big Dipper. Boom! The ancient desolate tower shone brightly and turned into a boundless tower, enveloping the entire Big Dipper. D*eminent. What's going on? The ancient desolate tower. That's the Eastern Wilderness divine artifact, the ancient desolate tower. The ancient desolate tower sealed the entire starry sky. What is he trying to do? At this moment, everyone in the world was shocked, not knowing what was going on. Even the beings in the Forbidden Zone were very uneasy. It's time to reel in the net, Liu shouted coldly and rushed into the primal chaos space like lightning. Chapter 5:17. Within the chaotic void. Immortal light lingered in front of them. Auspicious clouds filled the sky, and a vast heavenly palace loomed. Together with the Amitabha Emperor's belief clone that flew over with Mount Meru, there were a total of 12 great emperors. They opened up a path in the chaos and rushed towards the heavenly palace. The immortal domain is right in front of us. Opening up a path in the chaos was much more difficult than the path to immortalhood that had been cut off previously. Every step forward required a lot of hard work and effort. Kill! Divine light whistled and cut through the chaos. The group of great emperors did not slow down at all. We're finally here. After going through untold hardships and doing their best, the group of great emperors finally arrived at the front of the heavenly palace. On a huge square paved with white jade, the majestic heavenly palace that stretched for thousands of miles stood in front of them. Endless radiance blossomed above the immortal palace. An eternal and everlasting intent realm filled the entire immortal palace. It's the immortal domain indeed. Feeling the eternal intent, the group of great emperors was overjoyed. Their eyes shone brightly. Let's go! The 12 great emperors flew towards the majestic palace gates. Plop! Just as they rushed up the 9 steps in front of the palace gates, a boundless pressure pressed down on them. Caught off guard, the group of great emperors was ruthlessly slapped down by this huge pressure. They crashed onto the steps with a boom. This force came out of nowhere. Caught off guard, the group of great emperors fell from midair. They were battered and exhausted. This is the sacred ground of the heavenly palace. It's indeed disrespectful for us to fly past. If we want to enter the palace, we can only walk forward. The great emperors were experienced and knowledgeable. After thinking for a while, they understood the reason. There must be an immortal formation in front of the palace. This immortal formation's function was to prohibit flying. They could only walk forward. Although we are supreme beings, I'm afraid we can't be too arrogant in the immortal domain. Even though the group of great emperors were people who had suppressed the ancient times and looked down upon the world, they had no choice but to put away their arrogance in front of immortals. Let's go! Putting away their arrogance, the group of great emperors stepped onto the steps and walked towards the palace gates. Boom! As he took a step forward, the pressure that enveloped him suddenly increased by tens of thousands of times. The enormous pressure made the group of great emperors tremble slightly. This place, how can there be no test to enter the immortal sect? The fish leaps over the dragon's gate, the lightning burns its tail. If we want to ascend to the heavens in a single bound, we must go through trials. Test. Haha, what test are we afraid of? The martial monarchs burst out laughing. Their bodies glowed brightly as they gathered their monarch force and continued to advance. There were 9 steps in front of the gate of immortality. At this moment, everyone had reached the 2nd step and was about to step onto the 3rd step. Boom! When he took the 3rd step, the enormous power suddenly increased sharply, as if thousands of heavy mountains were pressing down on him. It is indeed a test. There were 9 steps, and with each step, the pressure increased by 10,000 times. This kind of formation must be a test. Dong! Dong! Boom! Their entire bodies flickered with divine radiance. Natural laws circulated, and divine chains of order spiraled. Every single emperor gave it their all. They surged with divine might and advanced courageously. Level 7. Level 8. Ninth level. Every step they took was as if they were going against the entire world. When they took the last 3 steps, it was as if they were walking with the sky on their backs, as if the entire world was pressing down on them. I am a martial monarch, the supreme of this world. Even the heavens and earth cannot make me submit. The martial monarchs roared and used all their strength to take the 9th step and ascend to the 9th step. The bones in their bodies crackled, and the blood in their bodies surged like raging wave. The martial monarchs sublimated to the extreme and returned to the martial monarch realm. They unleashed their strongest power and finally stepped onto the 9th step. Ding-dang, the celestial sound was faint, like music and flute, melodious and drifting. Flowers fell from the sky, golden springs surged from the ground, and multicolored light filled the sky. It was as if they were welcoming, congratulating, and celebrating. Amidst the various phenomena, the gate of the immortal palace slowly opened. Ha 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 ha! Looking at this scene, the martial monarchs laughed heartily. After going through hardships and passing the test, the gate of the immortal realm was now open, and the path to immortality was open. After waiting for so long, they had finally succeeded. We have finally stepped into the immortal realm. Immortality is right in front of us. The group of emperors grinned from ear to ear, straightened their clothes, and walked into the gate of the divine palace with majestic steps, with smiles on their faces. Then they were tricked to death. The fish have fallen into the net. Liu looked at the immortal palace with a smile and waved his hand gently. Clang! The gate of the immortal palace closed instantly. Clang! A mighty bell chime reverberated through the clouds. The laws intertwined and the Tao flowed. The Kunlun immortal bell transformed into a huge golden bell, suppressing the entire immortal palace. Ah! What's going on? The sudden change caused these great emperors to turn pale with fright. Damn it! We are trapped. The ancient Qilin emperor raised his Qilin staff with a grave expression. This is not the immortal realm. This is a trap. Heavenly Venerable Chang Xing pulled out his sword with a clang. Bastard! Who is it? Who is scheming against us? The Stone Emperor raised his black halberd and roared furiously. The other martial monarchs also had ugly expressions. Scheming against the martial monarchs? And tricking more than 10 martial monarchs? Who was so bold? Who was so generous? Kill our way out! The martial monarchs roared as divine light bloomed in their hands. Powerful attacks were about to erupt. It's too late. Liu chuckled and pointed his finger. Buzz, black and white light flowed out as the Taiji Yin-Yang fish landed in the immortal palace. When the chaos was first created, Yin and Yang appeared. Heaven and earth, black and yellow, were born. Taiji Yin and Yang formed the great Tao. The 5 elements and 8 trigrams proved the heavens. A mighty song rang out, and the entire immortal palace was filled with black and white Yin and Yang. Yin and Yang evolved, and black and yellow intertwined. The 5 elements rotated, and the 8 trigrams were born. A huge Taiji diagram descended from the sky like a heavenly canopy, and a boundless aura came crashing down. When the Yin and Yang energies brushed past each other, the Tao laws collapsed, the order was annihilated, and the will of the heavens was no longer visible. At this moment, all the martial monarchs were horrified to discover that their powers were completely restrained by the Taiji diagram. They couldn't use any power at all. This aura, the Grand Empyrean. This is the Grand Empyrean. Under the suppression of the Taiji diagram, the martial monarchs cried out in horror. The legendary Grand Empyrean from the chaotic ancient era is still alive? Why is the Grand Empyrean attacking us? Some of the martial monarchs were confused. Could it be because of what we did in the past? Some of the martial monarchs who had started the dark chaos paled instantly, and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Grand Empyrean, please wait. Those martial monarchs who had done many evil things panicked, and couldn't help but beg Liu for mercy. However, Liu ignored them. This is my Tao. This is my rule. This is my world. Liu stretched out his hand and pressed it on the eternal immortal palace with a smile. I control the heavens, and uphold the heavenly laws. In my world, you have no room to resist. Keep. With a wave of his sleeve, the entire eternal immortal palace was sucked into the resource vault. All the martial monarchs who had entered the immortal palace were captured. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.